Hi guys, welcome back to another exciting video, so sit back, relax, and let's get started. The bag over your head smelled of smoke. You were normally around the smell quite often, but this was not the kind you were used to. The smoke you were more familiar with smelled like cigarettes and bonfires, which was a vulgar smell, but it was a scent you knew well and it felt like home. This smoke was sweet like torched caramel, a false comfort considering your current position. Your hands were cuffed behind you around the back of the chair you were sat on, causing them to go slightly numb from the uncomfortable pose. The tingles of trapped BLD starting to hurt your fingertips. You wiggled your fingers a little, trying to encourage some BLD flow, and heard a clear and rough voice from a few meters behind you that startled you. I think she's awake. FRK. Some shifting noises from the left and right made your head lift up even though you couldn't see a thing from under the heavy woven bag. It seemed that there was multiple people in the room from how spread out the noises were, and a whimper threatened to come up your throat and into the cold air. Stay calm. Why? And you've been through worse before, you told yourself in your head, trying not to panic and hyperventilate when you had a cloth sack restricting your breathing that would only make things worse, even though you doubted being kidnapped and handcuffed was the worst of what was to come. Footsteps echoed, coming closer and closer with each clear click of hard-soled shoes, making your pulse quicken and your palms sweat, not knowing who they were or what they wanted from you. The last thing you remembered before waking up in this cold space was walking back to the car from the spa. A cloth had been pressed against your nose and you passed out backwards into a pair of sturdy arms, not able to register a face before everything went black. It's definitely her, a voice somewhere to your right asked, their tone insinuating they were judging whoever had taken you, their tone lazy and subdued. A defensive reply came from your left. Yeah man, I don't fuck up, I do my research, it's definitely her, it's definitely his girl. A new voice. That was 4 different positions so far. 4 men at the very least were around you, cuffed helplessly to a chair. The footsteps approaching you came to a stop right in front of you, making you gulp. Your pulse hammering in fear that you couldn't show you weren't allowed to be weak. He hated when you were weak in front of anyone else but him. You had to keep your composure or he would be so angry if he found out. Well, from now on she's ours, aren't you, princess? You felt a hand slip around your neck, almost caressing your skin as the man in front of you leaned in, his voice getting closer, making you shiver slightly in fear. Our brand new toy, I wanna see her scared little face. The hand around your neck stayed as his other hand pulled the hood off, finally letting you have a good look at the warehouse room and the man. But you quickly wished the hood was back on. Holding you by the throat was a man with a pair of bright yellow eyes that struck a deep venomous fear deep within you instantly, causing an involuntary tremble that you internally cursed yourself for doing. But you couldn't stop it. He really does like to keep his toys shiny, doesn't he? No bruises, no marks. Will he miss you, little plaything? Let me go, you spat, trying to suppress your trembling. Oh, she speaks. Didn't think pets could talk. You really are a special one, aren't you? The man grinned, rubbing his thumb against your throat softly as he watched your eyes with excitement swelling sadistically in his own. Just let me G.A. A jolt of electricity surged against your neck from where his thumb was so innocently stroking, causing your body to spasm from the brief high voltage and your jaw to clench painfully. You're in no position to make demands, little spark, but maybe if you ask me politely and beg. A teasing glint of excitement flicked through his unnerving yellow eyes and you bit your tongue to stop your lip from trembling. Very aware of what this man was capable of now, you weren't eager to get shocked again. Come on now, beg, maybe we'll be nice and reward you if you beg or not, either way. This stubborn silence is starting to piss me off. You wouldn't like my voltage when I'm pissed. As if to further his point, he raised his other hand, letting electricity crackle violently, laughing when he saw your eyes widen, his hand around your throat squeezed softly. That got your pulse racing, didn't it? Did you like that? Bet that's your little kink, huh? He brought his sparking hand closer and you leaned away as much as you could, feeling his grip harshly around your throat, now holding you tightly in place. What's wrong? You don't like my quirk? I'm offended, he snarled, his excitement fading. I told you to beg. Please, you whimpered, closing your eyes tightly but still hearing the sadistic crackling of high voltage, wishing you were anywhere else right now. Please don't. That's better, princess, he purred, the sound disappearing, leaving the room silent apart from your panicked breaths. Your eyes were still squeezed shut, hoping that you were just having a nightmare. You'd wake up in his bed and everything would be back to normal. Well, normal for him. Open your fucking eyes, princess. The man let go of your throat roughly and you heard him step back a little. On opening your eyes, you could see him simply staring down at you, a dominating aura suffocating you. What makes you so special, HM? Why you? You looked away from the electric blonde to try rid yourself of the suffocating feeling, but found Yuri accidentally locking eyes with a pair of bright scarlet ones. They belonged to a red-haired man in a crisp tight suit, leaning back on a few crates while his eyes studied you curiously. When he notices you staring, he meets your eye and winks. In your panic, you look away to your right, seeing another man, this one with black hair and dark eyes. A joint hung from his mouth as his eyes lazily watched you, a glimpse of entertainment in them. He inhaled and exhaled deeply, smoke obscuring his face. That's 3, where's the 4th? You started to turn your head to look behind you, but the blonde in front of you grabbed you by the chin. What's wrong? I'm not enough to look at. He smirked, his fingertips buzzing with static against your face, causing your skin to prickle. You've gone very quiet all of a sudden. Did you break so quickly? His fingers grazed down the front of your throat, gently tracing your collarbone. A quiet little toy, very pretty too, but I don't think that's why he keeps you. His fingers played with the front of your blouse, undoing a button. FRK, this was bad. He opened another slowly and you grimaced. This was going somewhere worse than simple torture, and with 4 men in the room, thighs didn't bode well for you at all. He flicked open a third button, giving a glimpse at your cleavage, and you tensed, holding back from whimpering as you opened your mouth to beg. Stop, please. A low chuckle came from the man. You call that begging? Sounds very half-hearted. You like this, don't you? He opened another button and brushed his fingers faintly across your chest, feeling the goosebumps from the cold air and fear. Please don't, please just stop this. You don't have to do this. If you want money, he'll give you money. I'll give you the money. You don't have to do this. Please slap. Your head flew to the side, your cheek burning and your teeth aching from clacking together hard. The impact had caused your entire body to lurch to the side awkwardly, pulling at your arms in an unnatural way as they kept you hanging onto the chair you were bound to. Damn Kaminari, I could feel that one from here, the stoner said, half laughing in surprise. You lifted your eyes to glare at him, seeing his blurry outline through tears that you wouldn't let fall. Oh, that's woken her up a bit feisty, Senorita, he chuckled, taking a deep drag of his joint. You turned away to try sit back up, channeling your glare to the blonde Kaminari, who simply raised an eyebrow and grinned. There, she is no fun to break when they're already a broken and quiet little mouse. If you don't want money, then what do you want? You spat, your face pulsing with heat from the slap, your anger and adrenaline making a dangerously stupid combination. Right to the point, I like it. He knelt down in front of you, playing with the next button down that he had yet to open. You see, your sugar daddy, that big boss of yours. Well, he insulted us. He took something real important from us and tried to steal our dignity as a high-class gang with a big reputation. We couldn't let that slide. He tugged and the button slipped open, your chest exposed with just your bra hiding you. Your glare turned to a disgusted scowl, and you wanted to kick him away from you, headbutt him, spit at him, anything, but the fear of consequences kept your body locked and shaking. Piece by piece, we will take his empire, his dignity, and eventually his life. You are the very beginning, a precious jewel in his crown and a nice big message. His hand slid into your bra, grabbing a handful and squeezing, causing you to whimper and look away in shame. You're not up for ransom. You're not a bargaining chip. You're our property now. We intend to make that very clear. Isn't that right, boss? Boss? His eyes went to a place just above your head as you went to look up. A hand snaked around your throat, pulling your head up to force you to look into a pair of deep, piercing vermilion eyes that towered over you from behind, almost pressing your head back into his abdomen. When did he get there? How long was he there for? Now that he was over you, you could smell burned caramel again. Was it coming from him? A small smirk pulled at the corner of his face as he looked down at you, all scared and wide-eyed and exposed. A single tear spilled down your cheek as everything clicked for you. You weren't a person to these people. You were the property of someone they hated, and there was no chance of getting out alive. Kaminari smirked as he continued to grope you under your bra, your head still tilted up towards the blonde-haired boss with the striking red eyes. You squirmed to try get away from their hands, feeling dirty, letting the tears fall freely now. Your jaw was held to the point you couldn't open your mouth to beg or plead or scream for this to end, but you would try. You'd rather be dead than go through the hell that was promised to await you with these men. Just kill me, you whispered, a broken whimper. The man holding your head back scoffed. That didn't take long. Using his thumb to smudge away a tear on your cheek, he abruptly shoved it into your mouth, pressing down on your tongue to shut you up, forcing you to taste your salty tears and bring to you to gag a little. A smirk broke across his face at the sound, and you could feel the electric blonde snap to attention. Interested. Make her do that again. The boss smirked down at the excited electric user before tilting his head to the redhead. Kirishima, you want your fun? The other red-eyed man leaned forward from his place on the large crate, interested too. The blonde with his hand on your chest frowned, his grip squeezing painfully, pulling a whimper from your throat as you squirmed. Seriously, I did do the work of collecting her. I guess seems fair. The redhead shrugged and you tried to turn your head to scowl at him, but the boss hand around your neck and thumb in your mouth made it hard to move. But hell be damned if they thought you wouldn't try to fight. If they weren't worried about keeping you alive for ransom, then you would rather aggravate them to aggression every day you were alive than let yourself be raped over and over. Maybe you could prove you weren't worth the trouble. Using the distraction of the blonde pouting in front of you, you braced yourself and brought your knees up, fast and hard. They made contact with the blonde's jaw, making him grunt in pain and fall back, BLD spitting out of his mouth where you had hoped he had bitten his tongue off. FRK. One down. Your teeth came down hard on the boss hand and you jerked to the side, feeling BLD in your mouth and causing him to tear his hand away with a hiss. 2. With no grip on you from either man, You tucked your feet under you and stood up onto the chair, releasing your hands from being trapped behind the backrest, although they were still cuffed together behind you. You wobbled off the chair to dodge the boss who reached out to snatch you back, jumping awkwardly and tumbling but quickly getting to your feet and sprinting to what looked like a fire door. Fr King Beach. You heard the electric blonde scream furiously. Damn, still had his tongue then, you thought angrily. You pushed your legs faster, the exit only seconds away now. Zero. Fr King catch her, the gruff voice of the blonde called out, and you looked over your shoulder in time to see something fly at you from the direction of the black-haired man. He seemed bored as the white blur that came at you wrapped around your torso tightly, sticking to you and pulling back with a jerk. You lost balance and fell backwards on your ass with a yell of pain, pretty sure you just broken your wrist from landing so hard on it. You had to force it to the back of your mind though as you felt yourself getting dragged along the floor back to the very pissed off men. FRK. You kicked and twisted, trying to dig your heels into the ground to stop yourself from moving, but it was no use. The boss glared down at you, holding his bleeding hand with murder in his eyes, and you gulped, his BLD staining your lips and leaving an iron taste in your mouth. I'll admit didn't see that coming, Kirishima said, an eyebrow raised as he watched you twist and writhe like a trapped wild animal, trying to break the tape Zero had lassoed you with, looking insane with BLD around your mouth and a splattering of it across your chest from Kaminari. Just Fr King, kill me. You screamed, the sound echoing in the warehouse, making all but the boss wince at the uncomfortable sound. FRK man. Find something to stick in her mouth to shut her, the FRK up, Kaminari hissed. You find something, the boss snarled, making Kaminari shrink back a little. Bet you don't want your PP in there anymore, the stoner Zero chuckled, still holding the end of the tape in case you managed to spring to your feet again. Shut the fuck up, Kaminari growled lowly, his nose and mouth bleeding a little, which he wiped with his sleeve, spitting BLD down at you across your face. One girl managed to kick the asses of two hardened gangsters, even drew BLD without a weapon. She's got a huge pair of fucking balls on her, Zero whistled, sounding impressed. Great pair of tits too, Kirishima shrugged, looking down at you, still wiggling unconformably, very sure now that your wrist was broken under you. The pain was excruciating as you wiggled, and you could use your quirk, but did you want them to know about that? Pick her up, I'm done here, the boss growled, turning and walking away angrily, wrapping a piece of cloth around his thumb to wipe off the BLD from your bite. You were sure as hell you'd pay for that. Come on, Senorita, Zero sighed, kneeling down and pulling out a syringe, ignoring your wide-eyed struggling as he pierced your neck. Nap time. Twice. That's twice in 24 hours that you had been chemically knocked out. It was certainly starting to feel like a habit that you would wake up groggy, in an unfamiliar setting and handcuffed. This time you were standing, your body weight supported by a chain that hung from the ceiling attached to your handcuffs. At least they were cuffed in front of you now, and if you went on tiptoe you could shift your arms enough to bend your elbows towards your chin. As you were coming out of your groggy state, your broken wrist made itself known and you hissed, realizing your body had been hanging from it while you were unconscious. It was swollen and bruised from the cuffs and throbbing harshly. Thankfully your hands could touch in their cuff state, and you took a deep breath, focusing on the fingertips of each hand, trying to activate your quirk and bite back the pain. A few seconds passed by until a faint glow appeared under the skin around your broken wrist along with a horrible pressure. Slowly, the pain and the glow went away, revealing unblemished skin and a working wrist. The red mark on your cheek from Kaminara's slap had faded too. All in all, your whole body actually felt like it had had a good night's sleep. I love my quirk, you sighed happily, reveling in the after effect of a surge of endorphins from using your quirk, rejuvenation. You couldn't heal super old wounds, missing limbs, or any brain damage, but you could speed up a perfect healing process on most major injuries. Its biggest side effect was the happy, nonchalant buzz that flooded your body after it was used, flooding your body with sleepiness. What was that? Your eyes lazily opened and looked up, searching for the voice in the dim room that looked like a basement hid a prison cell. Slowly, your eyes focused on the red-haired man from before, the one who took you. It's you almost slurred, surprising him with how light and goofy you sounded. You're a bastard. He uncrossed his arms and walked towards you, hand lifting to touch your cheek where he had just witnessed the red handprint and swelling vanish. That thing you did with your hands, you've got a healing quirk, haven't you? Didn't have that on the file. He sounded irritated, but mostly with himself. So that's what makes you so special, why you haven't got any marks or bruises before we picked you up. He laughed lightly and reached up to your wrist, the one that was broken. Does it hurt? He gave it a prod and you shook your head, your eyes glued to his hair. What kind of product did he use to get it so spiky? Did he have to do it every day? You imagined him fretting in the mirror first thing in the morning, trying to get the perfect spike with gels and spray, and giggled ever so slightly, causing him to glare down at you. What's so funny? You shrugged and lifted your face to look at your cuffed hands. Where am I? He smiled and crossed his arms. That's confidential, sweetheart. Let's just say you're home now. Oh, you frowned a little, looking down at your feet, your head still feeling light and not quite sobered up. Can I sit down? I'm sleepy. The fuck is wrong with you? If we wanted you to sit down, we'd have bolted you to a chair, he half growled, semi-curious to what he guessed was the aftermath of your ability that was making you so loose and goofy. Oh, so how did you do that? How does your quirk work? He pressed. You bit the inside of your cheek, unsure of how much information to give up, if any. Silence was the route you wanted to take, but you were taking long enough to decide that the man in front of you began to seem irritated. I'm more patient than the others, I'll admit, and I can appreciate the fucking balls on you, but I asked you a question and I expect you to answer why, and the way he growled your name made you shiver. It made it personal. How long had he been watching you before he took you? How long had he been stalking your every move to plan this all out? How much did he hate your boss? Your eyes lifted to look at him and he frowned. He reached up to take one of your fingers in his hand, twisting back to the point that it began to hurt, making you wince. I will break you over and over again piece by piece if you refuse to answer me nice and clearly. I don't want to do this, okay? Your eyes widened at his threat with your mouth dropping open, but no words came. Fine, he sighed, jerking his hand slightly and twisting your pinky finger, breaking it. Fuck. There's your voice, FR King. Use it. How does it work? He held your ring finger next. Come on, baby, don't make me hurt you. I don't like it. By vibrations in my fingers. You blurted, not eager to feel another finger snapped. Vibrations. It was glowing. He applied more pressure, sounding like he didn't believe you for a second. FRK, it's all I know about it. I put my hands on someone and vibrations fixed them. That's all I know. He stilled. You can heal others. FRK, fuck. Why, yes, only new wounds, though nothing major like a lost limb, you said quietly. Looking down and away, feeling weak. One broken finger was enough for you to blab. Interesting. His hand came away from your fingers to your face, sweetly stroking your cheek. Now is that so hard? See what happens when you comply. You get nice touches, not painful ones. You dared not to move your face away, simply looking down, tears threatening to build up in your eyes. I'm not like the others. I don't like to hurt our captives, but I'm always the one that gets sent in for interrogation. Don't hold it against me, okay? You looked to the floor, lip between your teeth from the pain of your finger. He sighed and looked around before his red eyes landed back on you. You wanted to sit down, right? He asked softly, and after a moment you nodded ever so slightly, cautious. Will it feel good to sit down? He cooed, placing a finger under your chin to tilt your face up, urging you to meet his eyes, his face getting closer. You hesitated again before nodding. A light smirk darkened his face as he moved to whisper close in your ear, cupping your face. Then let me feel good first and you can have what you want. Your teeth grit, tears building higher in your eyes as you tried to turn your head away. But his hands held you still. HRM, baby. What do you say? One hand slid down to rest on your hip before moving further down to hook your thigh, bringing your leg up to wrap around himself. Doesn't that seem fair? You swallowed thickly, feeling his lust pressing against your core through his pants, your pulse racing and feeling like you were going to throw up. It could have been so much worse if one of the others had caught you using a quirk. A simple broken finger is a tickle compared to what they would do. Then again, you could just heal yourself instantly. He leaned you back to press you flush against the wall, taking your other thigh and lifting you, pinning you to the wall with his PP pressing through his and your clothes. But he had let go of your head. He ducked his face to kiss and nibble at your neck while you pressed your head back against the wall, making him assume you were enjoying this. See, this isn't that awful, is I fuck. Just as he had looked back to your face, you brought your head down hard on his in a headbutt that made you see stars, your movement happening a little too fast for him to activate his own quirk in time. Oh, fuck, you groaned, rolling your head back as your skull throbbed. You fucking whore, he bellowed, his hands wrapping around your neck and roughly letting go of your legs. He squeezed hard as he snarled, choking you until you couldn't breathe, using his whole body to crush your windpipe, doubling the stars you were seeing. You stupid bitch, you had the chance to do this the easy way. Now we're gonna do it the hard way. Just as you felt like you were gonna pass out and find peace, he let go. Violent coughs and wheezes tore your throat from the inside as you gasped for air. He grabbed your body and turned you roughly to pin you face first into the wall, reaching above your head to lower the chain a little so that he could push your upper body down and hold your ass up into a standing table position, your arms held up either side of your head. No cough, please. Please don't. Please, I'm begging you. Please don't. Please. No, please. You screamed and cried, trying to wiggle away, but his hand pinned you in place while you heard him unbuckle his belt. You had the choice and this is what you chose, he says plainly, wrapping the belt around your middle and holding it roughly to better control you with one hand. I don't want this. You'd better relax, baby. This is happening whether you like it or not, and it's gonna fucking hurt if you don't relax, he almost cooed, massaging and palming your ass over your skirt. Stop, please stop. Get off me. It'll be over quicker if you just shut the fuck up. That wasn't Kirishima. Both you and Kirishima turned your heads to the third voice in the room. Kaminari was leaning against the wall near the door, arms crossed and looking impatient. How long have you been there, you fucking creep? Kirishima snapped, his hands still on you as he addressed the electric user, making you squirm in discomfort, tears falling rapidly down your face that you tried to hide in your arms. Long enough to see that being nice gets you nowhere, he winked, his eyes zoning in on Kirishima, hands on your ass. You're killing my buzz here, man. FRK off and wait for your turn. My turn, he laughed, stepping closer, making Kirishima's hands tighten, his fingertips digging into your ass. You came down to talk, not fuck. You can have that later. The boss thought you'd get carried away, you always do. We did talk, got a nice juicy piece of information, he smirked, his fingers loosening and sliding up your back to your hair, giving a gentle tug backwards. Did you know this little miss has a quirk? A pretty good one too. Kaminari's eyes lit up, a little bit of static emanating from him. Does she now? You tried to hide your face again, but Kirishima's hand in your hair held you in place. All you could do was watch as Kaminari walked up and crouched slightly, grabbing your face in one hand. What can she do? Doesn't seem to be an offensive quirk, otherwise she would have used it when she bolted before. Kirishima smirked. How about a demonstration? You got your knife. Your eyes widened and you fidgeted, trying to pull away from the men or at least stand back up again. Kaminari laughed and reached into his pocket, pulling out a switchblade, opening it and waving it near your face. Anywhere? He asked, and Kirishima nodded. How about an eye? Will that work? He teased, holding your face tighter as he brought the knife centimeters from your left eye, enjoying the wild panic that filled them. You felt Kirishima shrug as he held you still. Try it. No, please, don't. You pleaded, knowing deep down it was futile, but you'd rather try anything than have an eye gouged out again. SHHHH, you're gonna piss me off, let me have my fun. Please, don't do FUCCCK. Your throat and ears were ringing. A stream of wet ran down your left cheek as the knife slipped through your eye like butter. Your body bucked and shuddered, trying anything to curl away and clutch at your face. But your hands were pulling uselessly at the chains and the two men were holding you in place. Holy shit, I forgot how much an eye bleeds. Kaminari laughed, pulling the knife back out. Now what? I need to touch my face. You howled, still thrashing and screaming from the excruciating pain. PFF. No you don't, you managed to fix your face before without touching it, Kirishima snapped. This is too major for that. I need direct contact. You spluttered between howls and screams. The redhead frowned, watching you writhe for a few seconds more before looking to Kaminari, who shrugged. She'd have done it by now if she could write. Either way, I'm sick of her mouth. Fine. He reached above her head again and fiddled with the chain. A second later, your arms and entire body dropped, falling to your knees against the wall. Immediately, you cupped your face and took a deep breath, trying to calm down enough to focus and ignore the river of BLD that ran down your face and arms. The two men watched you closely, waiting for what felt like an eternity. Now what? Kaminari started to ask, but a bright glow made his words drop off. The glow bled out between your fingers, much brighter than what Kirishima had seen before. The glow lasted for a minute before fading and your body slumped, collapsing to the side in overexhaustion. What just happened? The blonde asked in shock as Kirishima knelt down and pushed your hair and hands away from your face, revealing you were out cold. Curiously, he lifted your eyelid and chuckled. Like it never happened, she can do this to others too. Not just herself, he gestured for Kaminari to look. FRK man, that's a pretty decent quirk, guess that's why Dabai keeps her so close, he grinned. We hit the fucking jackpot by taking her away. No healer in his house anymore should put a dent in his operations, right? But Kirishima's face looked stoic, confusing the electric blonde. What? She's much more valuable than we initially assumed. I may have fucked up. Maybe not, but he's gonna want her back a lot more desperately than we thought he would with a quirk like that anyway. Kaminari sighed and crossed his arms, looking down at your sleeping face, blissful and healthy. It made him sick. At least we can beat the fucking shit out of her over and over and make her heal herself. Kirishima chuckled. You sick fuck. Hey, I wasn't the one about to rape her. Nah man, not after Daba's been up in that. Since the eye incident, you'd pretty much been left alone for the past few days. The chains were loosened, but still tightly affixed to your wrists so you could still walk around or lay down whenever you wanted now. You'd hoped they had lost interest in you, but on the third day, you had your first visitor. You were lying on the ground, looking up and counting each crack in the concrete ceiling above for the 100th time when you heard the sound of a key turning in the lock of your door. Lifting your head, your eyes picked up the shape of a male before he stepped into the room. His black hair and black eyes narrowed down at you in confusion. I almost forgot about you said quietly, regarding Zero for a moment before returning to your counting. If he wanted to hurt you, then he was welcome to get it over and done with. If he wanted something else, then he was gonna have a tough time. You were ready to claw out an eye in vengeance for what Kaminari did to you, even though you didn't have much strength left. You hadn't really eaten much over the last few days. Mostly water from the sink you could just about reach in the basement, and whatever scraps on a plate you would wake up to in the middle of the floor, so you weren't quite able to put up as much of a fight as before if this man wanted to go there. Then again, you reeked. Maybe it would help keep him at bay. Hey there, Senorita's still alive. Regrettably, you mumbled, and he laughed. We feel the same. Well, kinda. The plans shifted a bit, I guess. As long as you've got a pulse, then that's all the boss cares about. You turned your head away as he stepped inside and sparked his lighter to light his ever-present joint in his lips. So you're just down here to check a pulse. Considering you're talking away, I'd say that pulse is just fine. You're not an easy one to break, are you? Nope. Can I have a shower? TCH, really? He rolled his eyes, taking a deep inhale, exhaling slowly over his shoulder. You do get what's going on here, right? Come on, please. You're the most human one here. I thought I should at least ask. Human? He scoffed. Well, yeah. You're the only one who hasn't laid a hand on me or seemed too enthusiastic about seeing me in pain, so yeah, human. Do you even realize what your boyfriend's done? How inhuman he is. Nah, bet you didn't care. All curled up by his side, licking his wounds and cleaning the BLD off his hands when he came home from doing his humane work. You lowered your eyes. I didn't get a choice, you know. He inhales and exhaled again, shifting his position against the wall and sighing. Yeah, I know doesn't change anything though, senorita. Why do you call me that? You asked softly, trying to change the subject. A soft smile formed on his face as he shrugged. Just how you say, miss, where I'm from. You're from Spain. He laughed. Nah, born and bred in Tokyo. I guess I had a Spanish mafia family, though my father was one of their members. He glanced back at you inside again, a flash of pity in his face. Don't worry about it, I guess. Wanna hit? He extended his hand, the butt of the joint facing you. Usually you'd decline, but the thought of brief escape from reality was too tempting. Sure. You stood up, the long chain rattling as you approached Zero and reached out your hands. Nice and slow, no quick moves, okay. You nodded and he shifted to reach your hands, letting the joint exchange fingers. Slowly, you brought it to your lips and inhaled deeply before lurching and coughing, making Zero chuckle as he held his hand back out to retrieve it. Takes a bit of getting used to, it's not for everyone. He raised a brow as you brought it back to your lips with a determined look, taking a lighter drag and exhaling with only a slight tickle in your chest. You pick up quick, he muses, watching you take a third and final deep drag before passing it back and exhaling. Thanks, though I suppose you're used to smoke, he teased, taking a hit and passing it back to you to take another deep toke. You looked away as you let out a puff of smoke and held out your hand to give it back. Did he have to keep dragging that up? Wasn't all this punishment enough? What did Dabai try to take from you guys? Make me understand. Zero paused, looking a little uncomfortable at the thought, piquing your own interest even more. Was it that unspeakable? Or was he just not allowed to tell you? As he was about to open his mouth, the sound of a door bursting open on an upper floor made him almost drop his joint as he jumped. It was followed by the sound of aggravated voices and hysteria that made Zero swallow thickly and throw the butt to the ground, stomping it out. Sorry, senorita. Best not to dwell on it. I gotta go. And with that, he left the room, closing and locking it behind him before disappearing upstairs. You groaned and made your way back to the spot you were lying in before, sitting down with your eyes closed, enjoying the light buzz from the weed. It was one of the few pleasures left in your life now, even if it was one you adamantly avoided before. Unless Dabai thought you were still alive and actually cared about you, it wasn't likely you were going to be saved. You'd die in this cell eventually when they were done with you. SHHH, you cooed to yourself, curling your knees to your chin and trying to close off those thoughts. Above, you could hear fast speaking and shouting along with heavy footsteps, and a glimmer of hope flashed within you. They sounded panicked, hurt. Maybe Dabai had come for you after all. No, you couldn't hope not here. Don't get your hopes up. The arguing continued for a while, loud enough that you curled up on your side with your hands over your ears to block it out and enjoy your temporary high. Katsuki, just let us get the damn bullet out. Kirishima winced, trying to hold his oldest friend steady using his hardening as Bakugou set off multiple explosions from his hands that Kirishima was cupping tightly, containing the damage. FRK off, shitty hair. I don't need you pinning me down. Kaminari was standing a good distance away holding the emergency kit with a worried face, concerned for his boss but not wanting to come anywhere near him while he was acting like a rabid animal in pain. The trio's mission hadn't quite gone to plan and Bakugou had taken a few bullets, one through the shoulder, one through his thigh and one lodged in his chest by his armpit. It needed to come out ASAP. You're bleeding like crazy, Katsuki. Please just settle down already. Boss. Zero popped around the corner, out of breath from sprinting through the house, even more panicked at seeing his boss with multiple gunshot wounds and bleeding with a wild look in his already burning angry eyes. Zero, help us out, Kirishima grunted, taking another blow from Bakugou, pushing his hardening to the limit to handle the force. What can I? He stopped and blinked, looking over his shoulder for a second. I'll get why, and the hell you will, Bakugou roared, flailing wildly and shooting Kaminari a death glare when he tried to take a step closer with the tweezers. She can help. I'll take full responsibility for whatever shit she tries to pull. What makes you think she'd be so eager to help him? Kaminari asked, backing off a little and choosing to narrow his eyes at Zero to feel tougher. She'll do it, trust me. What have you been doing down there while we were gone? Kaminari smirked, but as soon as he did, Bakugo's pained scream of anger and agony made him wince and look to Kirishima, who held back tears for his best friend in so much pain. After a short pause, he looked Zero dead in the eye and nodded. "It's on you. Remember you said you'd hold responsibility if she does anything." "Chill, I know," Zero said plainly, turning to head back down to your prison room with grit teeth. "You'd better really want that fucking shower." He really wanted that fucking shower. Badly. Your skin felt like it was crawling and you were so itchy but couldn't quite reach all the spots with your wrists cuffed together. You were one of those people who had to have a damn good wash at least once a day, so this was torture in its own weird way. But you guessed that's why they did it. You were so lost in your own thoughts with your buzz lingering that you didn't hear footsteps outside your door, nor the key turning. You didn't hear anything until a voice was right above you. "Shut up and get up, don't say a word and just do as you're told and I'll get you your damn shower." Not if you understood. You blinked up at the black-haired man and gulped before nodding, watching as he unlocked your cuffs from the chain, keeping the original cuffs on you though and holding them tightly. "Not a word and you do as you're told. Nothing will happen to you, I swear it. Just don't act up now isn't the time." What was he talking about? Why was a shower so serious? You didn't care too much to worry about it. Maybe he was just being extra cautious. Either way, you let him guide you out of the cell and up the stairs to the main house, wobbling a little from starvation and your dimming high. As soon as your eyes landed on the luxurious decor and layout, your jaw dropped. It was beautiful, like a palace with charm and personality, art strewn about the walls, perfect mosaic tiling and so open. Nothing like Daba's hideout. You winced as your mind lingered on Daba, a strange pull of longing and emptiness aching your chest. But a clear and wild scream made you jump, a scream of your own threatening to come out of your mouth, but you shoved your hand over your lips in time, earning a simple nod of approval from Zero, who held you by your upper arm and led you towards a huge door. "You want that shower, right?" You nodded. "Then you gotta do something first real quick." "Hey, don't give me that look. It isn't Sequel. I swear we need your quirk." Your eyes widened. Was one of them hurt? "Don't argue. Okay, just do it and you can have your shower and it's done." You frowned, but nodded. Beggars can't be choosers after all. Zero took a deep breath to steady himself before pushing open the large door, making you go wide-eyed at what you saw. The redhead was holding down the boss, covered in BLD. While the boss was screaming and thrashing over him, Kaminari was holding a long pair of medical tweezers, trying his hardest to concentrate. None of the three men looked up as you walked in beside Zero. He looked down at you, expecting some shock or disgust at the BLDY scene, but your face was still. You watched the scene unfold in all its gore and emotion, barely blinking. You wanted to smile, to laugh, to see the ones who had taken you with intent to damage your body and mind over someone else in such distraught and pain. You wanted to sit and watch and laugh for hours, biting your tongue hard as to not let a hint of a smile show. But then he locked eyes with you. Red eyes pierced your own with fear, pain and fury shooting from them. His teeth clenched and his body trembled with how hard he tried to keep still and silent, not wanting to give you the satisfaction any longer. But even if he was still thrashing and screamingly, you didn't want to watch any more. Your chest ached in sympathy instead, which in turn made you feel sick and conflicted. This was a man who would watch you being flayed alive and be able to eat a steak without blinking. But that wasn't you, not even deep down. Slowly, you walked closer, your eyes never leaving those of the boss, finally catching the attention of Kirishima and Kaminari, who had finally fished out the bullet while Bakugo was holding perfectly still for once. "Got it, huh?" They watched in confusion and coiled to strike as you silently shuffled over and knelt down by Bakugo's side, trying your best to ignore the death glare as you lifted a hand slowly as to not cause a defensive reaction that would likely blow your hand clean off. A few inches from touching him, you looked to his face as if to ask permission, and his face wrinkled in a disgusted snarl at first but dropped as he looked away and nodded ever so slightly. You sighed out a breath you didn't realize you were holding before laying your hands gently over his shoulder and thigh wounds, closing your eyes to focus. "They better have some damn hot water for doing this shit," you grumbled internally before clearing your mind, drawing out colors in your head and feeling your fingers tingle, spreading to your entire palms. The men watched, holding their breath as their boss allowed you to touch him, expecting an explosion any second. As your hands began to glow, making the wounds glow too, their eyes widened. Even Bakugo glanced down at your hands, interested by the strange glow that had reached the other gunshot and cuts and bruises you weren't in contact with, feeling them go a little numb and itchy before seeing them close up and fade, watching his body heal perfectly until there was no more pain or ache, not even a mark was left. The wave of after effect made you wobble a little as you sat back on your calves, keeping your eyes closed to fade away from the room for just a moment longer, afraid of what was going to happen next. It was a lot of damage you had just healed that went far beyond the 3-bullet wound. He had to have been hiding a rather nasty injury to have made you feel so wiped out. Your whole body was tingling like you had just been rapidly vibrated for several hours on end, your nerve endings sparking on and off in pulses of dizzy pleasure and drowsiness. You heard shifting from the man in front of you before feeling your whole body get lifted by a hand around your throat. Too tired and numb to even wiggle or hold yourself up, dangling limply with your eyes half open to see the gritted teeth of the boss. The furious eyes of bakugou weren't on you though. Even with his hand so tight around your neck, he was snarling at someone else. The FRK was this Zero. Zero stood his ground and shrugged. Saves an awkward trip to the hospital, doesn't it? You're back on your feet instantly and ready to fight. Wasn't that worth the gamble? Look at her. Bakugou's eyes drifted back to you, limp and barely conscious, and his eyes narrowed, glare softening. What's in it for her then? A shower, you rasped, making sure your payment for healing him was heard. Bakugou paused before smirking and bursting into laughter, setting you down on your feet but keeping his hand around your neck to keep you standing. She does a farking stink. Go on then, Zero, take her, get her out of my sight. We'll talk later. Like a ragdoll, he throws you away from him and you crash to the ground, barely enough energy to roll up to your knees and cough to open your airways again. He brushes off his hands and turns to Kirishima, who was frozen to the spot throughout the entire thing, only taking a breath and moving to stand to attention when bakugou glanced at him. Office now. Zero looked down at you inside, bending to pick you up by your arm and tug you towards the door, a curious Kaminari right on your heels. You're being awfully nice, Zero, he teased, being instantly met with a middle finger from the tape quirk user. I'm just saying. You put your neck out for that. He wrinkled his nose as he gestured to you, slumped and barely able to put one foot in front of the other as Zero half drug you through the house. She's here, why not make use of her? He answered plainly, and Kaminari snickered, moving to walk ahead and backwards to face you both. You gave her a reward though, a nice reason to cooperate. His eyes went dark as he looked at you. If we want her to do something, then she doesn't have a choice. You heard Zero tisk and come to a stop to push open a door. From the tiles on the floor you assumed it was a bathroom. Feeling Zero set you on a counter and start to unbutton your dirty blouse, taking off one cuff to attempt to slip the clothing off of you. And no, you tried to wiggle away, but your quirk had exhausted you. Before you could fully register what was happening, your blouse disappeared, as did your bra, and you used your leftover strength to cover yourself with your arms, which Zero left half-cuffed, the metal hanging from just one wrist pointlessly. Kaminari Wolf whistled, letting his presence in the room known, and you groaned, turning your head away in shame. But you were too weak to fight this. What would be the point? Zero pulled you back to your feet to take the rest of your clothes off, moving behind you to unzip your skirt, but his hands went still as he sucked in a hiss. What? Kaminari asked, his fun interrupted by Zero's still hands. What? He snapped, asking again with a frown and moving to look over Zero's shoulder, taking a deep inhale himself. FRK man. You squirmed under their eyes and stepped away unsteadily, looking up to the shower cubicle and reaching out to stable yourself against it. I can do the rest, just please go away. You knew what they were staring at. You knew the horror forever carved into your skin, the brand you weren't allowed to heal with your quirk. Dab is a fucking monster, or she's just a masochist, Kaminari said lowly, unable to take his eyes away from the large scar that spread across your back, badly healed and clearly in the overall shape of dancing flames, a live imprint of Dab's quirk forever marked into your skin, his brand on you. I thought you could heal yourself, Zero muttered, reaching past you to turn on the water and pull the rest of the zip on your skirt down, letting you step out of it, slowly, not giving a flying fuck after what they had just seen on you. Nothing was worse than that on your body. I wasn't allowed to, was all you muttered back before you stepped into the spray of warm water, still in your undies with the confused stares of the men burning into your back harder than Dab's flames ever did. A sigh left your lips as you felt the water caress you, lifting your head to let the water obscure your vision and soak your hair. This was as close to heavenly as you imagined life would be from now. You wanted to savor this moment for as long as possible, as you didn't know when or if you would be allowed this luxury again. Luxury, a fucking shower. How far you had fallen in such a short amount of time. For the first time since you had been taken, you let your tears fall, feeling them mingle with the droplets from the shower down your cheeks. It wasn't until your sobs were shaking your shoulders that you even realized how exhausted and broken you were feeling. Ugh, stop fucking crying. Oh. Kaminari whined behind you. Shut up, pass her the soap and FRK off. Kaminari scoffed and did as he was told, shoving a fancy bar of soap and a washcloth into your side that you managed to catch before they dropped, your eyes meeting his yellow ones for just a moment before he wrinkled his nose and left the room with a huff. It was quiet for a long time. You stared down at the soap and cloth in your hands, unmoving, letting your sobs slow to numb endless tears. You thought they had both left until a hand came into view, gently taking the soap and cloth from you and making you flinch. It's just me here, let me, Zero said softly, slowly taking them and lathering the washcloth before gently swiping it across your shoulder blades, causing you to tense up again. But he persisted, gently washing you. He stayed in safe areas, avoiding your ass and tits as he moved around you in the spray of the shower, getting just a little wet as he cleaned you. He washed around your neck and you felt his hands slipping to either side, cupping under your jaw softly to tilt you to look up at him. Your eyes reluctantly looked up at him, feeling heavy from crying and from the steam of the shower. Senorita, come on, you gotta help yourself here. You softly shook your head and sniffled. What's the point? What's my life even worth now? It's nothing to me anymore. You saw his shoulders rise and fall in a gentle sigh as he frowned down at you in concern. You moved your face away, his fingers falling from your jaw as you took the cloth from his hands. I can do the rest myself. A small smile flashed on Ciro's face as he stepped back. I'll get a towel and some clean clothes for you. Stay here until I come back, okay? You nodded, soaking the cloth under the water to wash the tear stains off of your face. He smiled again and you heard the door open and close behind you. As soon as you were alone, you collapsed to your knees and curled inwards, feeling the deep dark abyss of hopelessness swallow you whole. Katsuki, why would your letter have a reward? Kirishima asked, his eyes curiously watching his boss as he took a sip of his whiskey. Bakugou smirked and shrugged, taking a seat heavily in his chair behind his giant oak desk. Are you really questioning me, Kiri? Kirishima immediately dropped his eyes and shrunk back a little submissively. Of course not, I just don't understand. I thought we were gonna let her rot. I still might. It's not her I'm particularly mad at right now. Kirishima gulped. Ciro, Bakugou's face lost the smirk, instead developing a dark and angry expression. Yeah, he pissed me off by pulling that stunt. She saw me weak. Kirishima frowned in confusion. So what, lulling them both into a false sense of security? Bakugou shrugged. Something like that. He took another sip of whiskey. I think I'll keep her. She's got more than she's letting on with that quirk. Kaminari said he saw her regenerate her eye. Kirishima nodded slowly. Well, she fused the cut back together, fixed her optic nerve maybe. I don't quite know what she did. Bakugou chuckled. She can do more than she maybe knows. You remember the operation a few years ago? Kira sat up straighter, enraged. Did she? Is it back? When Ciro had come back to get you from the shower, he came in to find you sat down and slumped to the side, the warm water pouring down your back in a way that had lulled you to sleep. He sighed and turned off the water before stepping into the shower and wrapping a plush white towel around you, pulling you up into his arms bridal style. Your wet hair clung to his shoulder as your head tilted back a little. Completely out cold and sleeping soundly, he couldn't help look down at your face and see the human being under the shell that was Dabba's little pet, the pet he was meant to despise and break into pieces. He knew that he shouldn't let himself do this. He knew this was a bad idea, but he refused to listen to the quiet nagging voice in his head that told him he was pushing his luck with the gang by being so lenient with you. Bakugou was obviously pissed at him. Kaminari was beginning to view him as a traitor, and he was sure Kirishima would do whatever Bakugou asked of him, even if that meant killing one of their own. But he couldn't find it within himself to leave you to the wolves after you obeyed and helped Bakugou without a fight. Turning to head further upstairs in the multi-level mansion that served as a home base for the four men, Ciro carried you silently. Only the soft sounds of your light snoring was heard until he reached a door and turned the handle. I'm crazy, he muttered as he carried you into his room and gently laid you down on the bed next to a pile of folded clothes he had dug out from the back of his drawers. I don't know if you can hear me or not, but I'm gonna dress you, okay? He waited for a moment, seeing no change in your face. With a sigh, he pulled out a long shirt and lifted your upper body to slip it over your head and thread your arms through the sleeves. He set you back down to slide on a pair of boxers, taking off the undies you had left on while in the shower to preserve some of your dignity, tossing them with the wet towel to the floor and looking down at you, lost for what to do next. You still had one of the cuffs locked tight around your wrist, your skin purple and bruised from the metal. So her quirk doesn't work on herself and another at once, or she can control where she aims her healing. His stomach felt funny as he hesitated, his hands lingering near the loose cuff. He should recuff you properly and take you back to your cell. That would put him in the least amount of shit. Then again, he did say he would take responsibility for you. Did he really only mean for healing, Bakugou? What harm could you really do? Either way, he begrudgingly lifted your free hand and slid the cuff back on. Enjoy a warm bed tonight, Senorita. I can't even imagine how awful tomorrow is going to be for you. His words trailed off as you made a small noise in your sleep and shifted slightly, your expression soft and innocent. FRK, he groaned quietly, looking away from you and balling his fists. I'm so fucking stupid. His fists unfolded to pull at the covers, adjusting them in you so that you could lay down in the bed properly with the covers keeping you warm and snug. Without taking his eyes off of you, he slipped out of his tailored suit and into some loungewear to wear in bed, cautiously climbing in next to you and laying down. You'd probably either freak out or bolt out the door when you woke up, so to keep you from running into trouble, he wrapped some tape around your ankle and his own, leaving some space between you, but ensuring that any move to leave the bed would wake him up. At least now he would sleep a little easier with this reassurance. Sweet dreams, Senorita. Denki Kaminari sat alone in one of the lounges, his feet propped up on a low table with a glass of wine rolling in his hand. His eyes were narrowed on the fireplace that was alight and crackling, his mind wandering far away from the slight tipsiness he felt. Every time he closed his eyes, he could see your back and the horrid burns that decorated your otherwise flawless skin. I wasn't allowed, he repeated your earlier words, and his teeth grit, his grip almost cracking the wine glass in his hand. Is she just some masochist or what? I know Davis a sick freak, but to be his girlfriend wouldn't she need to be just as fucked up? He mused aloud, placing the glass down on the table and sitting forward to rest his elbows on his knees, his hands folding to set his chin on the back of them. Kaminari was under the impression you were the prized pet of Davis' empire, that you were causing as much destruction and reveling in your shared power with him. That was the rumors anyway. You were so hidden away, only ever glimpsed by his side in public for mere moments. The more he saw of you, the more he wondered if the rumors were actually true. Were they just beating up a victim of circumstance and not a ruthless animal who would torture them if the tables were turned? The life of crime he lived didn't make torture, death, or rape unheard of, but innocent women and children changed things. Maybe Ciro was making the right call here if you weren't what they said you were. Were you innocent? Did Bakugou and Kirishima know this? Damn it, he hissed, swiping his hand to send the wine glass flying, shattering with static shocks against the far wall, staining it red before slumping back in the low-back black leather sofa. Warm, you were warm and comfy. You stretched out a little, feeling soft sheets and a foam mattress surrounding you, and smiled. It was all just a bad dream, all of it. Getting kidnapped, Dabai, everything. You sighed, rolling to the source of warmth in the bed into the chest of your lover before this whole nightmare, keeping your eyes closed to enjoy the sleepy happy haze. But as you went to stretch your arm across his chest, your other arm jerked with it and you heard the sound of clinking metal. What? Your eyes snapped open in confusion, seeing handcuffs around your bruised wrists. As yesterday slowly registered, you looked up the chest you were laying on to lock eyes with a mortified and stiff Ciro. You yelped, sitting up to shuffle away, falling off the side of the bed and landing on your back with one leg still hanging onto the bed, attached to something. Is that tape around my ankle? Whoa, hold on, Senorita, hang on. He slid over to the side of the bed you had fallen from and reached out his arms to pick you up and help sit you on the side of the bed before reaching down to disconnect the tape between his ankle and yours, furthering your confusion. The last thing you remembered was crying in the shower. When did this happen? Why were you snuggling him in his bed? You couldn't even look at him, your face burning in a mortified blush as he sat back up, rolling the tape in his hands into a ball before throwing it over his shoulder. So what do you remember? Your mouth opened and closed a few times, your vocal cords failing to work with you at first. I healed your boss, then I had a shower, then I fell asleep and woke up here. You relayed it all as simply as you could, and Ciro nodded. You looked down at your knees and realized you'd also been dressed, which only fueled your embarrassment. But a burning question in your head was making itself the priority. Asked Ciro. Yeah, he answered softly, still sat beside you, relaxed and watching your face closely. What's going to happen to me now? From the corner of your eyes you saw the male's shoulders rise and fall in a deep sigh as he rubbed his eyes. That's a damn good question. Come on, let's go face our punishment and get it over with. I hope you enjoyed your shower. Our punishment? Ciro stood up and reached a hand out for you to do the same. You took it and slid off the bed to your feet and let him guide you to the door. Yahar, don't think about it. Okay, let's just get it over with. Easy enough for him to say, you thought bitterly. For you, this small comfort would be over, back to chains in the basement cell and no food, maybe even beaten to death slowly over a month. You didn't move as Ciro opened his door and started to walk down the hall. Seeing that you had shut down, he sighed and rubbed the side of his neck. The longer we leave it, the worse it will be. For you, maybe. At your words, Ciro understood what must be going through your brain. You had good reason to worry, and you were probably right. Bakugou wasn't one for leniency with his closet's friends, let alone a prisoner. You had every right to want to stay in his room and hide forever. But Ciro had to respect Bakugou's decisions, whatever they may be. I know, I'm sorry. He hesitated before holding onto the chain of the handcuffs and tugging you gently down the hall with your eyes downcast. What else could you even do? Running wasn't an option. Hiding would get the only man here who had stuck his neck out for you beaten to death. Accepting your new life or leaving life behind entirely were your two remaining options. It was a dark and twisted choice, but a choice nonetheless. If things didn't work out, then death was what you had asked for before. While in your thoughts you had zoned out, simply following Ciro through the house until a voice perked up and made you pay attention to your surroundings. Hey Ciro, sleep well. Kaminari winked, walking by with a nearly finished bagel in hand, shoving the last bite in his mouth and swallowing it down. His eyes flicked to you, a flash of concern in them for the tiniest moment before he ignored you and looked back up to Ciro. The boss is in his study, he said to direct you to him if I saw you. His eyes darted to you for a moment before he nodded at Ciro and started leading the way. No sneers, no teasing, no disgusting comments. How bad was the punishment going to be that Kaminari didn't even bother to torment you a little? It turned your stomach into a cold rock, and even Ciro seemed to swallow a lump in his throat. He didn't look at you or say a word as he continued walking, pulling you behind him until you three were standing in front of a large oak door. He took a deep breath before Kaminari knocked and pushed it open, revealing Katsuki Bakugou behind his desk, Italian leather shoes up on the expensive oak. His cheek was resting on his fist as he lazily watched you both walk in. no emotion on his face as Denki backed out and closed the door. Zero dared not say a word as he walked up to the desk and bowed his head respectfully. Your own head was so low to begin with. All you could do was lower your eyes and glance away, feeling the tension swallow and suffocate you. You want to tell me what's going on, Zero? I don't like being left out of the loop. I was only honoring a deal she helped us and I was fucking you part of the deal. Zero stiffened up, his jaw clenching while you tensed and blushed at the very idea. I didn't fuck her. Bakugou tilted his head back, amused. Then why was she in your room all night? In your clothes too, I can only assume, can't I? Zero narrowed his eyes down at you. She stayed the night but nothing happened, she was out cold. Why wasn't she returned to the cell after her reward? It was silent as Zero searched for an answer, for any sane reason, but was lost for an explanation that made sense. As the seconds ticked by, Bakugou's cold gaze turned to you. And look at you standing there wondering what's going to happen to you now. Your eyes cautiously raised to look at the boss who smirked, taking his feet off the desk to sit forward. Kaminari, get in here, he called out, and you heard the study door open but didn't dare move to look. Yeah, boss. Bakugou stood up and walked around the desk to you, lifting your face from under your chin with a gentle grip, your eyes locked on his in sheer panic. His fingers softly moved to cup your neck. Such a fast pulse like a little mouse. Tell me, little mouse, are you hungry? I mean, you must be right. I heard my boys haven't been feeding you much at all. His eyes flicked up, looking over your shoulder to Kaminari, who stiffened. Denki, why don't you take her with you to the kitchen and get her some food while I finish talking to Zero here? Your eyes widened at his flippant personality at first, but as he mentioned Zero you tensed and your mouth opened before your mind could stop you. Hey wait. No please. Bakugou's eyes shot back down to you in angry surprise. Don't hurt him or punish him. Please put me back in the cell, starve me, beat me, but please don't punish him for what he did. Why? And shut up, Kaminari whispered through gritted teeth behind you while Zero looked horrified. Bakugou looked from you to Kaminari to Zero before he began laughing. Are you gonna take this? Letting this mouse protect you when she can't even protect herself? Why? And Zero's voice was low and angry, making you snap your attention to him, Bakugou's hand brushing your neck and maintaining contact, keeping you constantly aware of how close he was. Zero's jaw clenched as he looked you dead in the eye. Learn to shut the fuck up, I don't need your help, got it? His cold tone shocked you and you tensed up, nodding a little in response. Ah, she's such a good girl for you, Zero, isn't she? Is that why you said you'd take full responsibility for her actions? Bakugou teased, looking back down at you and brushing your hair from your shoulder, making you freeze up. I made my orders clear, didn't I, Kaminari? He said lowly, his taunting demeanor fading to a low dominating fury that made Kaminari jump a little before stepping forward to loop his hand around the chain of your cuffs, tugging you towards the electric quirk user and away from the slowly angering Bakugou. Come on, he said lowly, pulling you reluctantly from the room, your eyes flicking to Sira, seeing him look defeated but keeping his posture proud right up till the door closed behind you, separating you both and leaving you alone with Kaminari, who was still pulling you away. You've just dumped him in deeper shit, Yano. If you want to help, then you need to do what you're told. What's gonna happen to him? You asked softly, wishing you hadn't said anything, not even about that fucking shower. Denki shrugged, leading you into the kitchen and taking you to one of the stools at the marble kitchen island. I don't think he'll kill him, but Kiri and I haven't ever done anything like this before to see what would happen. It's definitely a first, Sid, he commanded, and you carefully sat down, your hands resting on the island top with a clink. He walked to the large fridge and began to pull out a few boxes and bottles. No allergies, right? Kiri got that information, but not that you had a fucking quirk of all things, Denki scoffed, moving to a cupboard and fetching a few things from inside, placing them beside the ingredients from the fridge. You frowned down at your hands. So what do you all know then? How long was Kiri looking into me? Denki grinned over his shoulder as he started whisking some eggs. Oh, sweetheart, we thought we knew everything about you, but you apparently have quite a few golden little secrets. I mean, fuck, we even know your damn menstrual cycle. That should tell you how long we had been waiting to take you. The one thing we didn't know alongside your quirk was your actual relationship with Dabai. He went quiet as he moved to heat up a frying pan, placing the mixing bowl on a nearby surface. Slowly he turned to you, meeting your confused gaze with one of his own. My relationship. Yeah, we were under the impression you were a bit tougher. I mean, you gotta be to want to willingly sleep next to one of the most dangerous and fucked up men in the world, right? You bit your cheek and looked down at her hands. So you know so many things about me, but you're right. There are certainly things you don't know. I won't bore you with the sob story, but I did not willingly climb into bed every night with that monster. Denki's eyes widened as your tone darkened, a painful anger buried deep within you around the topic. I see. He turned around and poured the eggs into the pan. So what? Why does that change anything? You said bitterly, a decent sleep giving you the energy to fight your circumstances, surprising Kaminari. It changes a lot. We thought you were a monster too, some sadistic fuck with territory we could shatter. From what I can see, he dished up an omelet and slid it across the island table to you with a fork following just behind. That's not the case. You looked down at the omelet and picked up the fork, taking a slow bite even though your appetite had been non-existent since you first arrived at the mansion. Is that why you're not hurting me? Why you're being nicer? You saw some of what he did to me and realized maybe I didn't ever ask for this. A tear landed on your plate, surprising you, and you closed your eyes before opening them to look at the electric blonde. I've gone from 1 monster to 4 in the space of a week. His eyes narrowed. You still see Zero as a monster. He's actively partaking in keeping me here, so yes. Kaminari growled, slamming his fist on the island top, making you jump in fear. He's getting his shit beat out of him for being kind to you right now, and you think he's a monster. You think he's as bad as the man who burned up your back and wouldn't let you heal it. You look down in shame, hearing Kaminari tisk. Eat your fucking eggs and make them stay down if RK knows what's going to happen to you today. What's this? You looked up to the doorway, seeing the redhead Kirishima blink in absolute confusion, his eyes darting between you and Denki. Don't look at me, man. Bakugo's orders. Bakugo's orders. He frowned and looked down the hall in the Voj direction of the study before Kaminari cleared his throat. He's a bit busy at the moment talking to Zero. Kirishima looked back to you both in the kitchen and frowned sadly. Oh right, omelets this morning. Yeah man, pick your sauces. This next one is yours. Cool man, did you hear about Gyro's new club? Kaminari's head perked up a little, a faint pink tinting his ears. She finally got it. Yeah man, we should visit soon. Your jaw dropped a little as the two men talked casually, as if you weren't even there, as if their friend wasn't beating up their other friend. Your stomach twisted as you tried to block it all out and keep your eggs down, playing with what was left on your plate with your fork until someone slumped into the stool beside you, panicking you at first until you saw the familiar raven hair. Zero looked down at you, a slight growing bruise under his left eye but nothing else. He smiled softly down at you and you slowly returned it. How could you call him a monster? Guilt swam deep within you and you slowly reached out to touch his arm, your hand glowing and confusing him before he quickly pulled back and away. Ah, no, don't do that. Just he seemed a little panicked, glancing over his shoulder in the direction of the doorway, and you understood. That bruise was meant to be a reminder. If you healed it, then well, you didn't want to think about it. Zero, come get your plate, Kaminari called as he realized he had entered the kitchen. Thanks man, he said as he stood up and grunted ever so slightly, his hand tensing near his ribs. But as he saw you were looking at him, he pushed the ache away. He didn't want you to feel guilty, but you were already up to your neck in it. One by one, Kiri, Zero and Denki sat down at the table around you and dug into their breakfast. The whole scene feeling surreal to you, with your bruised wrists wrapped in metal and in someone's shirt and boxers, while they all talked and laughed as if you weren't even really there. Maybe you were still dreaming. The fourth man finally entered the kitchen, and surprisingly the good mood between the three chatting males didn't even waver. Bakugo picked up the plate left on the side for him and slid his eggs into it, pouring some hot sauce on it before sitting near Kirishima on the opposite side of the island to you and started digging in, even chuckling at a funny story that Kaminari had finished telling. He felt your eyes on him and tilted his head to look at you, his red eyes filling with curiosity before you quickly lowered your gaze and started to slowly finish your omelet. Was this better or worse than being locked in a cell? Dabai lifted his head to exhale, filling the air above your heads with smoke from his thin-rolled cigarette. His fingertips traced your bare shoulders as you watched the last wisps dance in the air and trembled against his chest, keeping your face warm on his own bare skin. The air was cold due to an open window in the bedroom, but his body and fingers kept you warm as his quirk made him a 24/7 radiator, one of the things you genuinely loved about him. You're still shivering, doll, his voice rumbled through his chest, making you jump slightly. Are you cold? You looked up at him and shook your head with a faint smile, closing your eyes when his fingers moved to brush your cheeks and bring your lips to his in a gentle kiss. This was what he could be like behind closed doors. He could be sweet and romantic and caring. He shifted over you to put out his cigarette, pulling you over him as he laid back down on his back, never leaving your lips. You let him pull you to straddle him, the bedsheet pulling around your hips, making you really feel the chill of the cold room. Now you're shivering, he chuckled against your lips, leaning back to drink you in, taking away even more warmth from you. Dabai, come back, you whimpered playfully, pressing your body close to his to feed off of his heat. His fingers danced on your hips as he smirked, feeling you press your bare body tight to him, snuggling your head into the crook of his neck. His face dipped to nuzzle into your hair, sighing. I've been hearing some rumors around my men. You gave a lazy to prompt him to continue, not all that bothered with the gossip and mostly focused on his hands that rubbed your hips and back in soothing motions. They've been calling you my queen, he chuckled, and you stiffened just a little. I am king of a mighty empire, so it makes sense that the girl who sleeps in my bed each night would be considered my queen. His hand stopped moving and landed on your hips with a firm grip, making you gulp. Is that what you would consider yourself? Why? And his head moved back to rest on the pillows, leaving you sitting up and staring down at him in slight confusion and fear as his eyes analyzed you. And no, you said quietly, trying to read his expression desperately. Was he pissed with you? Playing with you? Flirting? Trying to make you scared? He smiled and your stomach dropped. No, exactly, you're not my queen, you're my toy, my little pet. His fingers trailed up your body, leaving terrified goosebumps in their wake until they wrapped softly around your neck, playfully squeezing. I wanted you. When I took you, I want you in bed with me, and here you are each night. If I wanted you dead. His grip squeezed and your eyes watered. Well, it wouldn't be hard. Speaking of which, you could feel his arousal pressing up at you from beneath. This was the kind of thing he liked, the kind of stuff that excited him. You brought your hands up to his, slipping your fingers delicately around his, and tried to smile softly, urging him to go back to being nice. I can't breathe. I heard another rumor. His grip tightened, crushing your windpipe, and your delicate prying turned to desperate clawing. They heard you moaning his name while I was gone for a few nights now. I know he wouldn't be here. I'd have been able to fucking smell him on you, but you were touching yourself and thinking about him, weren't you? Your vision started gaining little black dots and you scratched at his hands, tears rolling down your face as you tried to shake your head. And no, that's right, cause you're mine, aren't you? No one else is allowed to touch you. You're not allowed to think about anyone else touching you. Is that understood? You frantically nodded your head, on the verge of passing out, your lungs burning for breath. Good girl. He let go and you fell forward onto his chest, gasping and coughing while he stroked your back sweetly. You're so cold, let me warm you up, baby. His hands began to heat up as they stroked and you closed your eyes, pressing your face into his chest submissively, begging for forgiveness with your body that he seemed to be giving you until you heard the crackle of flames. Stop. You tried to move away as you felt the flames lick your skin, your nerve endings screaming at you to get away. His nails dug into your skin, and as you looked down at him, you saw nothing in his eyes, just dark, endless pits. You're mine, my property. I'll make you remember that. Even if I'm not around. The flames grew against your skin and you screamed, thrashing wildly to get away from him, smelling your skin burning long after the nerve endings had died. You pressed your hands together, kicking off your quirk to fix what he was burning away, but that made him growl. In seconds, he sat up and flipped you over, pinning you belly down on the bed and holding your wrists in one hand. Don't you fucking dare. Not this time. He used his legs to pin yours and placed his other hand in the middle of your back, his flames coming back to life tenfold, hearing your animalistic screaming as he watched the flames dance and peel your skin, licking it to the muscle. You had passed out and stopped screaming at least 5 whole minutes before he stopped and simply looked down at his masterpiece. Now that's beautiful, he sighed happily, tracing his fingers across your burnt flesh. It would be a shame if you woke up and made it go away. He picked up his phone from the bedside table and lifted it to his ear. Boss. A voice crackled on the other end as Dabai licked his lips, his eyes not leaving his mark on you. He was practically salivating. Do we still have those quirk collars? A quirk collar. Kirishima stared at you as you finished explaining, in pure shock at your words. You nodded, feeling your neck and reaching out for the glass of water after the memory of Daba's hands made your throat go dry. He kept my hands bound for a few weeks too in case I managed to get the collar off. No painkillers, no creams, no medical attention. I'm lucky it healed the way it did. Kirishima looked away from you to his notes on the laptop screen. A small part of him was telling himself that he did a good thing. He did good by taking you away from that monster. But as he looked back at you, he knew he'd done exactly what you said, taken you from one monster and given you to 4 more. Kirishima wasn't quite as psychopathic as Dabai, but he had done some fucked up things in his life. So had Kaminari and Siro, and Bakugou was the most messed up one of all of them. At least you only had to worry about the one monster before. You couldn't go back and you couldn't be set free. The rest of the day went by spent in Kirishima's office while he tried to sort out his myriad of paperwork. You attempted to help but ended up sat on the floor folding paper cranes out of the pieces of paper he deemed trash ready. One by one you filled the front edge of his desk with cranes, making him raise a brow at you and ask you what the hell you were doing, to which you replied with a shrug. That was the longest conversation you two had since talking about Dabai, but the silence was comfortable. You were free to wander around the office, drink your water and do what you wanted with the scraps of paper destined for the bin. What was there to be uncomfortable about? Ah yes, being in handcuffs and being in someone else's boxers with your nipples on full view through a thin white shirt was probably considered uncomfortable. It was weird at first for Kirishima to have a prisoner aimlessly wandering his office and keeping yourself busy, but he grew to like the company, even though you didn't seem to want to talk. Every now and then he'd glance up at you and watch how your tongue poked out between your lips ever so slightly when you were concentrating on the last steps of making yet another paper bird to fill his desk with. He'd be lying if he said that a part of him regrets not taking the window of opportunity he had down in the cell to fuck you. You were beautiful, you were all theirs, why shouldn't he? He groaned slightly as he remembered how you felt under him started getting hot, BLD rushing down and distracting him from work. Your eyes had lifted once you had heard him groan, and now he was just staring at you, weighing his consequences as your beautiful eyes bore into him curiously. Something snapped inside him. Are you Ulri? Come here. Ew. He rolled his eyes at your dumbstruck face and repeated himself, pushing back from the desk and pointing to the space in front of him. You swallowed and stood up, your legs a little numb from sitting cross-legged on the floor for so long. But you slowly made your way around the desk, his eyes trained on you almost hungrily as you stood before him. I heard you were so good for Cyril, whatever he told you, you did. Aw fuck. So tell me. He stood up, gently pushing you until your ass hit the desk, his hands either side of you. Did you fuck him? His face was inches away, a curious spark in his eyes. He hasn't touched you yet, but his whole body was attempting to dominate yours. You shook your head as you almost growled back, disgusted by the man in front of you. I didn't fuck Cyril. I didn't fuck anyone. His brow raised as he smirked at your tone of voice, pushing you with his body until you were forced to sit on the desk with him between your knees. I'm relieved. His hands slipped up from the table to your thighs, his thumbs stroking soft circles on the sensitive skin on your inner thighs, working their way up. It felt good. You wanted to deny it, but your body felt good, although your panicked and racing heart and head made you feel sick. No matter how nice he was, he still stole you, tried to rape you, and now here he was trying again. How could you ever feel comfortable in this house with wandering eyes and hands attempting to have their way with you? You pressed your cuffed hands against his chest to try hold him back, but he took it as a sign of the opposite, leaning his face closer to ghost his lips across yours. They were surprisingly tender. His breath fanned gently across your face and you closed your eyes. You could pretend it was him. If he was gentle with you, you could keep your eyes closed and pretend you were with him. Instead, you'd done the same with Dabai hundreds of times. How hard would that be with Kiri? Slowly, you resigned yourself to your fate and tilted your head to meet his lips, another person's face held tightly in your mind as you felt Kiri stall at first, shocked by your willingness before he sighed hungrily and slipped his fingers inside your boxers. It's not Kiri and it's not Dabai. It's not Kiri and it's not Dabai. It's him, it's him, it's him. You chanted over and over in your head as you felt him brush a finger through your folds and groan happily into your lips, his tongue pressing for entrance, which you allowed. Your hands on his chest balled up, taking the fabric of his shirt in them as he started to slip a finger inside you, stretching you in your half-ready state and making you moan in half discomfort, half pleasure. Good girl, he praised, but you quickly brought his lips back to you. Don't talk, it's harder for me if you talk. He growled happily at your action and used his thumb to flick across your clit as a reward, making you gasp against his lips before he pushed a second finger inside you. He kept them still as he thumbed your clit, slowly driving you wild. You hadn't been touched quite like this in a long time. Dabai was never one for foreplay of any kind, so this was nice, really nice. Your soft moans were driving him crazy, and he could feel your wetness around his fingers that started to drip down his hand. He smirked, starting to move his fingers inside you slowly, eliciting a deep and happy groan from you, your hips even squirming a little to encourage him to go faster. His pee-pee stirred in his pants, eager to get out and get inside you. He quickly unbuckled his belt and pants, pushing them down just enough to pull out his pee-pee, palming it as he slowly fingered you, his thumb still teasing your clit. He parted from your lips to rest his forehead against yours to hear the string of moans and pants that left your mouth as he quickened his pace, wanting to feel you come around his fingers before he fucked you into the desk. I am close, you whimpered, and his pee-pee flexed in his grip, begging to be inside you as you came. All good things come to those who wait, he told himself, smirking proudly as he felt you reach the peak, your walls spasming and clamping around his fingers as your head fell back, a wild yet soft moan howling out of you as you felt your orgasm smack into you hard. What the fuck are you doing, shitty hair? You gasped as you heard the office door slam shut, turning to see Bakugou standing there with his arms crossed and a death glare in his eyes. Your face flushed in deep embarrassment and fear at the presence of the boss. How long had he been there watching? Listening, Kirishima looked frustrated as he backed away from you to zip up his pants, his fingers leaving your hole in a way that made your legs twitch from your post-orgasm sensitivity. I was just having a little fun with our prisoner, he shrugged, looking you dead in the eye as he licked his fingers nonchalantly, making you gulp. You wanted to run and hide, but he kept you pinned on the desk. Sounded like she was having a lot of fun. Stop fucking around and get out here. It's your turn to cook and we're all fucking starving. His eyes burned into you as he lifted a hand. Come on, you're not eating in those clothes. You looked wide-eyed between the two males, waiting for Kirishima to move away and let you follow the boss commands. He did so begrudgingly and sat down in his chair. Give me a few minutes and I'll get started, he almost grumbled, and you took your cue to hop off the desk and walk to Bakugou's side. The boss eyes followed you all the way to him before he scowled at Kirishima. Don't be long. Bakugou led the way down the hall silently and you followed a few steps behind, still flushed from your orgasm and utter embarrassment. But the boss didn't mention it and you were quite thankful under your mortification that made your skin crawl. It was almost as if he'd saved you, just a little too late to preserve all your leftover dignity. It wasn't too dissimilar to this entire situation as he had technically saved you from Dabai. All a little too late to save your soul in some sense. Even if he was letting his men take pieces of you whenever they please. You rounded a corner behind him and went up a few stairs before he finally came to a stop at a door and pushed it open, turning to you at last and nodding his head with a stoic expression. Your jaw clenched slightly at the command, feeling like a dog being told where to come and go, but you didn't want trouble and walked in. Looking around and seeing Kaminari and Shiro sat down with a few paper bags on the table in front of them, talking between each other before noticing you. There she is, Kaminari grinned, standing up with his hands raised and coming over to take your arm all too gently, making you flinch, but it went unnoticed by the electric blonde who beamed down at you with a wink. We were waiting for you. Kirishima had you hidden away for so long. A faint blush hit your face as you looked away in shame, and you felt the smirk of bakugou burning into the side of your face knowingly. Shiro raised a brow, his eyes scanning your tense frame curiously and reading the expression on his boss face before his breath hitched for a second. Damn red idiot can't keep his hands to himself, can he? Can the floor just swallow me, please? You groaned internally. HRM. Kaminari gave a questioning look to Shiro before looking down at you, and his jaw dropped, his hand on your arm letting go as he stepped back to cross his arms and smirk. Sly dog. Bastard, you mean. Bakugou stepped forward and put a hand on your shoulder, making you freeze up. Exactly, so take her to get washed up and then get her dressed. Our guests are coming tonight and I want her presentable for them. Guests? What kind of guests? A cold feeling twisted in your stomach, making you feel sick. His hand on your shoulder squeezed painfully and you whimpered, making the two other men look to their boss silently, all smirks and laughter vanishing. I want her on her best behavior. Shiro, remember you said you'd take responsibility, make sure she does as she's told. Shiro met the red glowing eyes of bakugou and nodded stiffly, not even sparing you a glance as he squeezed your shoulder one more time before letting go and leaving the room without another word. A breath you hadn't realized you had been holding and exhaled deeply from your lips, and you felt your body slump a little. So do you need us to get anything for you before you wash up? Shiro asked hesitantly, making you and Kaminari give him a confused look. He seemed uncomfortable, fiddling with his lighter as he cleared his throat. Like a pill or something. I know Kiri isn't the type to carry around condoms, and I don't know if you're on any permanent birth control. Your eyes went wide as it sunk in. Wait, no. We didn't, he only. You blushed furiously, crossing your arms tight across your chest as both men stared wide-eyed at your flustered state. Ugh, it didn't go that far, you muttered, and Shiro exhaled in relief, standing up and grabbing one of the paper bags on the table. Good. What's in there? You couldn't help but ask as you looked at the bag. Following after Shiro as he walked to the door, you were snagged by Kaminari as he wrapped an arm over your shoulder, grinning down at you. Don't worry your little head over it. You tried to duck out from under him, but it was useless as he steered you behind Shiro, the second paper bag in his hand. It was all becoming like a twisted Alice in Wonderland in this goddamn place. Nothing was making sense and you just had to roll with it. At least your outbursts weren't being met with physical violence. That was a bonus, right? Well, can you tell me anything about the guests? This time you were only met with stubborn silence, so it was likely not good news for you then. You sighed, your feet feeling cold against the marble floor, choosing to focus your energy on being mad about that instead. Maybe they'd give you some socks or shoes to make walking around a little warmer. You were led back into the same bathroom from the night before and froze up, remembering the way these two reacted when they saw your back. It was right after that they seemed to be a whole lot nicer. You hoped this wouldn't flip their mood back to violent again. You hesitated as Shiro ran the shower and set the paper bag down to rifle through it while Kaminari sat himself down on the countertop, watching you with no sign of looking away. You sighed irritably. Privacy seemed like it would be a thing of the past now. At least in the cell you had your own space. Got him. Your eyes went curiously to Shiro, who pulled out a few feminine toiletries including shower gel, razors, and creams before he shifted through the large cabinet to pull out a large towel and washcloth that had been restocked at last to save trekking around the house for you again. He pulled out a few packs of period products and you flushed slightly as he placed them under the sink in a basket. They're in there when you need them, okay, he said lowly, and you nodded. Not wanting to tell him they were kinda pointless. You had an IUD and that did a good enough job of stopping Aunt Flo from visiting. Shiro stuck his hand under the spray, deeming it warm enough as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a key. Come here, he beckoned, and you stepped closer to let him reach for your cuffs, taking both of them off to your immediate relief, sighing happily as you rubbed at the dark, horrible bruises. Why don't you just heal them instead of letting them go like that? Kaminari pestered, letting you know that he was still there watching. You bit back the urge to roll your eyes and opened your mouth to speak, but quickly squeaked and stepped back as Shiro reached for your shirt button. I can undress myself. You bristled and he rolled his eyes. You're taking too long. Answer his question. He batted away his hands as you started to unbutton the shirt, turning away from them with an uncomfortable blush. It takes a lot of energy to heal myself over and over. It's not worth it if I'm going to maintain the same injury. You shrugged off the shirt and quickly slipped off your boxers to jump behind the curtain without giving them too much of a show. The warm water was nice, and this time you were fully aware to enjoy it. A hand popped through the curtain to hand you the bottles from the bag as well as the washcloth, and you barely acknowledged it, tipping your head under the spray and grabbing the shampoo. Can you heal them today? Shiro asked, standing close by the curtain so that you could hear him. You chose to ignore him, lathering your hair with a happy smile and choosing to have some self-care time without thinking. He didn't seem to pressure you, letting you have some silence as you rinsed out the shampoo, reaching for the conditioner and combing your fingers through your tangled hair. You let the conditioner have a chance to work, slipping out from the spray to grab the shower gel. You wondered why they even bothered to buy this stuff, but you weren't going to complain right now. You felt human again, and despite the two men waiting beyond the frosted curtain, you felt like you were in a happy little bubble. Your eyes glimpsed down at the razor and you pouted. Was that why they seemed on edge? You picked it up and saw their silhouettes flinch. Yup. Was the razor a hint that you needed to look your best? Well, your legs and underarms were getting a bit spiky anyway with some begrudging wrinkles of your nose. You lathered up some cream and shaved. From the other side of the curtain, they boys breathed a sigh of relief that you seemed to be using the razor for its intended purpose before tensing up as they saw your form bend over to shave your legs, your ass in the air. A lump bobbed in Kaminari's throat as he watched your movements while Ciro crossed his arms and glanced away to avoid temptation. The whole ordeal from the minute you stepped until the moment you reached out your hand for a towel only lasted 10 minutes, and the boys were grateful their torture was short-lived. Kaminari watched with a smirk as your hand opened and closed around the air a few times before Ciro dropped a towel into it and it vanished behind the curtain. We've seen it all before, Yano, he chuckled, leaning forward from his perch on the countertop as you emerged, wet hair and silky legs with the towel wrapped tight around you. Doesn't mean you get to see it again, you grumbled, missing the way Kaminari's eyes darkened at the challenge. Oh, come on, Ciro got to see everything up close last night. Kirishima got to see some action today, spoil me for a change. Huh. His slimy smirk was back and you quickly sidestepped behind Ciro as the electric blonde reached out for you, resisting the urge to cling onto the back of his shirt. Aw, no fair, Ciro, play nice and share, why don't you? You saw Ciro's shoulders rise and fall in disdain before he looked over his shoulder at you with a blank expression. On the left, 4 doors down on the right-hand side, I'll give you a head start. What? WH head start? He rolled his eyes as he looked to the excited Kaminari and you tensed. 10, 9, 8. Ah, fuck. FRK you, Ciro. I thought you were on my side. You howled as you ripped open the door and ran to the left, your wet feet causing you to nearly slip a few times. 2, 1, go on then, Ciro sighed, watching as Kaminari grinned widely and took off after you. Poor girl. Bakugou sneered as he heard running from upstairs, quickly followed by a door slamming. The house had definitely gotten noisier since your arrival. Beside him, Kirishima chuckled as he chopped up some ingredients for dinner, having heard the commotion himself. She seems to be coming more alive every hour. Bakugou's red eyes narrowed on his closest friend, his confidant, his right-hand man. Is that a good thing? Kirishima shrugged, not meeting his boss' eyes, knowing he was still angry at him from his stunt in his office earlier with you. But damn, Kirishima had gotten so close to doing the one thing all 4 of them wanted to do since the moment you arrived. He didn't feel guilty, just cheated out of a good time. As he slid the chopped herbs into a boiling pot, he chanced to look at Bakugou, seeing the boss glaring angrily at the ceiling, shrugging once more as he replied, I never said it was a good or bad thing, just making an observation. A TCH left Bakugou's lips as he pushed himself away from the counter and rounded on Kiri to face him properly. I'm only gonna say this once, so listen carefully. Kirishima paused and looked up, a slight hint of confusion on his face at the sudden temper from his boss. I don't give a fuck if she's innocent or not, she's not having a fun ride here, this isn't her safe house, and we are sure as fuck not all going to be one big happy family, she's a prisoner. You squeaked as a hand grabbed the door just as it was about to shut, the wicked grin of Kaminari coming into view as he pushed it open and stepped inside, slamming it behind him. Your heart was hammering from the mad sprint you had just performed to try and get to the room untouched. But as Kaminari made his way slowly to you, you knew it had been futile. Come on, baby. Everyone else had some alone time with you, it's not fair. You flinched, backing up until your legs hit the bed. What's wrong? Did you act like this for Ciro? For Kirishima? He teased, and you looked down at your feet before taking an inhale and glaring back up at him. He was one of the ones you were most scared of. That electric quirk was nothing to laugh at, but you wouldn't go down easy. Your glare seemed to amuse him as he chuckled. What? Don't act like you've got principles now after fucking 2 of my buddies. I didn't. He raised a brow as he stopped walking towards you, a meter away as he tilted his head. You didn't what? I didn't fuck them. Ciro was a gentleman and only carried me, and Kirishima molested me, but I didn't fuck them. He winced at the word molested and bit the inside of his cheek. But you were in Ciro's bed. He pushed and you crossed your arms, furious with his accusation. I passed out in the shower and woke up there, but he did nothing to me, your other buddy. However, you felt your words taste bitter and stopped, seeing Kaminari's expression soften. I see. He stepped over and sat down on the edge of the bed, inviting you to do the same, which you did reluctantly after some hesitation. Yano, Kirishima used to be the most chivalrous of us all, telling us off if we weren't being manly and treating our guests with respect. You felt yourself scoff out loud before you could hold it back and froze up until Kaminari scoffed too and nodded. I know, right? Doesn't seem like the same guy. One day he just snapped, "No more Mr. Nice Guy." Being manly meant taking what you wanted and being brave enough to do it. You swallowed the lump in your throat and relaxed a little as he laid back on the bed, tucking his hands behind his head in a passive pose, showing he was no immediate threat before he continued. "We all went through something big that day, and he was never the same again." "He didn't hurt you, did he?" he asked slowly, and you looked down at him, seeing a flash of concern before you looked back to your knees and shook your head. "No, the only one who hurt me was you," you said softly, feeling a ghost pain in your eye, the same one that Kaminari had gleefully plunged a knife through. Although Kirishima had broken one of your fingers, it seemed far less evil than wriggling a blade through someone's eye socket. At least Kirishima said he didn't want to do it. Kaminari had taken pleasure in the torture. You saw the electric blonde sigh as he rolled up to sit up next to you, a gentle hand resting on your shoulder. "Don't forget who you were at that point in time for us, hell. Don't forget who you are now to us, our prisoner." He was right. You may no longer be a monster to them, but you were still Dabis property that they wanted to destroy. The biggest question in your mind was why they were being so kind right now. If it was to put you at ease, then their actions were doing the opposite. You were waiting for their next mood swing. "Anyway, sweetheart, you need to get dressed for tonight. Some very important people are coming to see how well we've trained our new pet." Ah, there it was. It felt so strange to not wear handcuffs after everything that's happened. Maybe they assumed their intimidation was enough. Or was it for the guests? Either way, Kaminari encouraged you to heal your wrists, loving the drunken way you leaned against him in your after effect before you snapped to sobriety and jolted back. They'd laid out a simple black dress, something mildly appropriate for dinner wear, and wasn't surprised to find that it fit perfectly considering all they knew about you. The dress itself wasn't anything flashy or extra, it was just enough to pass as decent, but to your utter horror, the back was open. "I can't wear this," you whimper, turning to Zero as he handed you a hairbrush. The bruise under his eye had gotten darker, framing his black irises and making them deeper, colder. You wanted so badly to heal him, just a little, just to ease the swelling, just a tad. His fingers brushed yours while handing you the brush, and you were tempted to sneak just a little bit of healing through the brief contact, but Bakugo's angry eyes flashed in your head and you stopped yourself. You didn't want Zero more beaten up. Behind you, Kaminari sighed loudly, rolling his eyes, his form visible from the mirror you were looking at yourself in, looking irritated. "You don't get a choice, princess. You wear what the boss wants you to wear or nothing at all," he ended with a dark smirk, and you quickly looked away from his reflection in the mirror, busying yourself with brushing your hair. "No way would you go down there naked. Besides, you look so cute in it, I could just eat you up," he snickers as he steps closer, putting his hands on your hips and smirking when you tried to wiggle away from him. "Stop being such a fucking creep," Zero mutters, pulling out a joint and lighting it, taking a deep puff to get it started before handing it to you. You gave the lit roll in his hand a hesitant look, wanting to be on your guard. "Not off your head, surely." He knew that. "Take a little bit, it'll keep you calm, Senorita," he urged, and you bit your lip and thought a little bit wasn't a bad idea, not if it kept your nerves down. With a raised brow, Kaminari watched as you slowly reached out, taking it and bringing it to your lips to inhale, impressed with the way Zero seemed to handle you so easily. "She behaves so well for you, Zero. You don't take enough advantage of that." "Shut up," Zero growls at the blonde as you wince, passing back the joint, already feeling a little lightheaded. Kaminari raises his hands innocently before reaching into a bag from the floor, one of the paper ones from early, and pulled out a shoebox. "Don't get her too high. She won't be able to balance in these," he says with unmasked amusement, opening the box and pulling out a ridiculously high pair of red heels that had your nose wrinkling in disgust. "No way, you'd go barefoot rather than wear those in a den of monsters." As if he could read your mind, the electric blonde scoffed and knelt down in front of you, roughly grabbing your ankle. "Remember, princess, you wear what the boss wants, or nothing at all, and I'm not too fussy on which you choose." Reluctantly, you let him slip the heels on, buckling them tight around your ankle before squeezing your leg right above your knee. "That's a good girl." You clung tightly to Zero's arm, trying your hardest not to slip in the heels and make a fool of yourself as you made your way down the stairs, feeling a little dizzy from the weed. The cool air of the mansion touched the skin of your back and you winced, constantly reminded of the ugly mark being on full display, and as if he could sense your spike in discomfort. Kaminari came up on your other side, his large hand spanning across the exposed part of your back. His warm palm covered just a piece of the scar, but it was enough to somehow calm your nerves just a little. You blamed the warm buzzing sensation from the contact on your high. Looking up at both of them, they had stony looks. Not a word was spoken since you had left the room, and to see the blonde look so serious was making you nervous again. Who the hell were these guests that had them so wound up? The three of you make your way through the halls to a large closed door, pausing briefly. Kaminari gave a small pat between your shoulder blades before removing his hand, and Zero gently unhooked your grip from his arm, a sorry look in his eyes when your own wide and fearful ones had snapped up to look at him. "Remember, I need you to behave, okay?" You gulped and gave a slight nod, noticing how Kaminari squirmed ever so slightly, his hand reaching for the door handle. You don't speak unless spoken to. You do exactly what you are told without question, Zero continued, his tone deadly serious. But his worried eyes twisted your insides. The urge to vomit was starting to feel a little overwhelming. Just be good, please. Kaminari finally pushed the door, keeping his arm extended to hold it open as he gestured for you to go ahead. So you closed your mouth tightly, giving a small nod to Zero that seemed to relax him a little before taking a deep breath and walking into the room. Immediately, your eyes were locked on the vibrant red of Kirishima, standing with a grin behind the boss, who was seated at a very large and expensive-looking dining table. There's our little sweetheart, the redhead Kued, licking his teeth ever so slightly, enough to send a shiver of disgust through you, and you tore your eyes away from him, glancing briefly to the dark red eyes of the boss. His usual glare was glued to his face, but his eyes tracked your movements closely, as if studying or waiting for an excuse to punish you. You wouldn't give him one. You lowered your head, looking down at the floor before you'd be tempted to look around the room, feeling Zero gently push you forward, guiding you to the table where 3 strangers sat opposite the boss. One of them chuckled, leaning forward to rest their chin on their hands. Oh my, you really did steal Daba's pet, didn't you, Kaken? That voice. Your eyes widened, snapping up without your control to the familiar green-haired man. Izuku, Izuku. You felt Zero tense beside you, but you didn't care Izuku was here. Why? The green-haired male gave a soft, friendly smile, standing up to approach you, taking in your appearance with a slow-moving gaze. Long time, no see, he muses before looking over his shoulder to Bakugou, a sly grin showing under his usually sweet smile, gauging the blonde's reaction. You know her. Bakugou snips, sounding almost bored, but the bopping of his knee under the table catches your eye. Was he annoyed or nervous? Of Izuku. She and I go back a ways, we shared a mutual friend. His smile settled on you knowingly and you felt a chill creep up your spine. You look away to the ground again, trying not to let your face give anything away as your chest squeezed, glimpses of a life long ago with Izuku and your mutual friend flashing behind your eyes, stinging them. The memory of warm, caring hands and sweet kisses wash over you for a fleeting moment, almost making you forget everything that's happened. Did Izuku know how he was? Did he still speak to him? No, right now that wasn't the concern. Why was Izuku here as guests for these monsters? You took a steadying breath before looking up to the 2 other guests, not recognizing Izuku's new friends. One was a short brunette, her sweet rounded face barely softening the intense look on her face that screamed danger beside her. An upright man with narrow glasses was staring down Kirishima, as if waiting for even the slightest show of things going sour. The air only felt thicker in the room the more you studied the 2 strangers, feeling yourself step back slightly, bumping into Zero, who wrapped an arm around your waist to steady you. Izuku raised a curious brow at that, turning his attention to Zero with an odd look, almost amused as his eyes lingered on Zero's face. That's quite a nasty-looking bruise. His eyes trailed down towards you, his sweet grin spreading wide across his face as he saw how much you tensed. Hasn't she offered to help? What? Izuku, why? If Bakugou's group hadn't known about your quirk already, he'd have just thrown you into the deep end of trouble. What was wrong with him? Who was this man now? Why was he playing with you like this? Didn't he want to be a hero? Why was he acting so cruel? Bakugou huffed, rolling his eyes. Don't think you've got one up on me. I know all about her little healing abilities. A glint of something flashed in Izuku's eyes before he changed his stare towards Bakugou, smiling innocently, holding back a smirk. Is that right? All about it, HM. Bakugou's eyes narrowed just a little, his jaw tensing. The 2 stared, as if having a silent conversation before Izuku breaks the tension, throwing up his hands. Well, I'm hungry, let's eat, shall we? I heard you cooked something delicious, Ijiro. Kirishima beamed, not bothered at all by the familiarity of using his first name nor the tension in the room, simply nodding as he excused himself to retrieve said dinner. Why don't you come sit with me? Izuku said, seeming to lose the air of unease completely as he gestured for you to step towards him. You looked up at Zero and Kaminari, who were stood either side of you, as if seeking permission. Izuku chuckled. Come on now, you're a big girl, you can make your own decisions. He looped his arm between you and Zero, pulling you away from him and placing his hand on your back right over the scar. Oh, his hand jumped away from your skin before grabbing your upper arm and twisting you before you could object, feeling dread seep through your veins as you were turned towards Kaminari with wide eyes. The electric blonde stared down at you coldly, his jaw tense as Izuku slowly grazed his fingers over the gnarly burn scar that covered your exposed back. You couldn't shift your wide eyes away from that cold look as you felt warm fingers run up and down your spine. Small appraising mutters coming from the green-haired man before he stops, turning to Bakugou, his voice hard and sinister, making you gulp. You've not been treating your pet very nicely. It wasn't them. The room suddenly goes deadly silent and you slap your hand over your mouth all too late. Why the hell did you do that? Why defend these monsters? Kaminari and Zero exchange a glance before looking to Bakugou, as if waiting for an order. You can't help but let your eyes wander across the table to the boss, your morbid curiosity getting the better of you, and you soon wished you hadn't. There was an unreadable expression on his face at first, as if he was just as stunned as to were at your words. But he seemed to quickly recover, raising his hand to lift a finger and crook it towards himself. Come here. Hesitantly, your feet began to move, wobbling a little over your heels now that you didn't have Zero to help you. You didn't have anyone to help you. The walk across the room felt so soul-crushingly lonely, knowing you were actively closing the distance between you and something that would hurt you, but a little voice in your head was saying that this was better than being disobedient right now. You swallowed thickly as you came to a stop less than a meter to the side of Bakugo's chair, your eyes glued to the floor. Kneel. You did. The plush, expensive carpet felt soothing on your knees, and the release of pressure from the heels on your feel was welcomed, but now you were kneeling next to the most terrifying man in the room. Look at me. That was a much harder task, as if your brain was screaming at you, your survival instinct starting to go crazy. Little mouse, don't make me repeat my goddamn self, he growled ever so slightly, his patience running razor thin. Zero had said he'd take responsibility for you. Did that still count? Would he get hurt again if you didn't do as you were told? For his sake, and his sake alone. You met the burning red eyes of the man in charge. His face held no emotion. You're gonna stay there like a good little pet, aren't you? You swallowed back bile in the urge to scowl at him, but you kept thinking of Zero. He didn't deserve to get tangled up in your punishment. So you nodded, looking down at your lap. Use your words, or I'll muzzle you so you can't talk. Yes what? You swallowed your pride, Daba's cruel smile flashing behind your eyes. He liked it when you called him. Yes, sir. How was Bakugo any different than Dabai? They both treated you as subhuman. At least he hadn't burned you yet. Food was handed out, seats were taken, all while you were kept on your knees beside the boss. From where you were sat, you could see Kaminari was the next closest to you, with Zero sitting on the same side but with an empty chair between them. If you had behaved, you assumed that chair was meant for you. Over the edge of the table, you could see Kirishima sat at the right hand of Bakugo, his red eyes avoiding you just like all of them, pretending you didn't exist. Izuku's friends were on the same side as Kiri, and Izuku himself took the opposite head of the table, his eyes occasionally flicking down to you, but not lingering, as if reminding himself you were there and suddenly not wanting to remember at all. That was fine, you didn't mind that. The floor was kinda comfy, it was nice to sit quietly. What you did mind was the way Bakugo took a forkful of food before lowering it down to you, as if feeding table scraps to a dog under the table. You weren't hungry enough for that. Open, he grumbled, and you pressed your lips together in a tight line, a non-verbal fuck you. His eyes narrowed and you swallowed, waiting for something bad to happen, but after a moment he simply sat up straight and brought the food to his own mouth, taking the bite for himself. Huh. A huff of amusement came from the other end of the table. What's so funny? Bakugo snapped, taking another bite. Nothing, Kaken. Izuku smiled innocently, his elbows on the table as he leaned his chin on the back of his folded hands. But maybe your new pet has distracted us as to why we're actually here, HM. As lovely as she is, and as wonderful as the dinner is, he looks to Kirishima, who grins back at the compliment. I'm here for much more pressing issues. Then spit it out already. Deku. Bakugo smirks, putting a strange emphasis on the nickname. Wait, you'd heard that name before. Izuku grinned, pulling his wine glass closer to peer at Bakugo over the edge as he took a deep drink of it, keeping everyone on edge. He finally set the empty glass down with an exhale, taking his time to let his eyes wander back up the table to Bakugo, hoping to see him squirm, just maybe a little. The Hero Commission want their money. There's only so long I can put it off with good word. You need to pay. Kaken tonight. Hero Commission. Money. The number one hero can't even buy time anymore. TCH. Bakugo smirks, the threat in Izuku's tone seemingly falling on deaf ears. Number one hero. Deku. That's where you'd heard that before. Only in whispers and mutters at Daba's compound. A new pro-hero, one to rival All Might, a pain in Daba's side. That was Izuku. The number one was moonlighting as a gangster. You're the number one hero. You can't hold in the question, looking over the edge of the table with wide eyes, and Izuku's grin is almost enough to split his cheeks. The others at the table either stiffen or seem surprised, and you start to shrink back, pinning your tongue between your teeth. Maybe if you bit it off you'd actually survive more than a day at a time. You hear glass crack, then explode right by your ear, jumping as shards sprinkle over the table and across your lap. Bakugo's furious eyes narrowed down in a death glare that could kill you if he tried just a little harder, fragments of his wine glass in his grip. You couldn't tell if it was BLD or wine seeping through his fingers. Wine drips onto the floor, a few drops landing on your thighs, staining your skin BLD red. FRK, did I say you could speak? He growls through grit teeth, and you find yourself shrinking back, eyes quickly dropping to your lap as you shake your head. Submissive, be submissive. That's 3. Remember that 3. His tone calms down, but you can practically taste the venom in his words as you nod your head. No clue what he meant. You didn't want to think about it. Zero, go get the money, Bakugou huffed, sitting back into his chair and flicking off a shard of glass from his lap, recomposing himself. Zero stands, trying his best to not look down anywhere near you as he passed behind you, leaving the room with a stoic expression. It's quiet for a long time before Izuku breaks it once again. Gotta say, I'm impressed, Kaken, how'd you snag Daba's queen? Bitch was on a walkies, he sneered, looking at his hand as he picked out shards of glass nonchalantly, as if it didn't even sting some spa. Ah yes, the damn spa. You looked down at your lap, following a drip of wine as it rolled over your knee, falling to the carpet. They made it sound so nice, like you were being treated like the queen they had once assumed you were. They couldn't have been more wrong. Surely they knew about that place. What actually happened inside that spa? Just like that? Huh. I'm impressed. What I wouldn't give to be a fly on his wall right now. How mad he must be, Izuku taunts as Zero comes back into the room. You shuddered at the thought of Daba's reaction. Was he furious? Did he care? Had he already replaced you? The tall, strict-looking man who came with Izuku stands and takes a large suitcase from Zero, nodding his head before moving to stand with the brunette behind Izuku, flanking him as he stayed seated between them for a few moments longer. Maybe I'll pay him a visit and ask him in person. I bet he's suffering without his little medic topping him up. He dabs at his mouth before throwing the napkin on the empty plate. Sorry, I can't stay for dessert. I know it would have been delicious. His green eyes flick to you and you feel yourself gulp under his knowing smirk. But I'll let you boys have fun without me this time. Have a good night. And with that, he left. The four men in the room were silent, looking anywhere but you as you held still on the floor, too terrified to move. The boss stood up, slowly stretching his arms above his head and walking around his chair calmly, seeming like he would simply pass you. But his hand shot out, wrapping into your hair and causing you to cry out as he lifted you by your scalp, silently throwing you against the table, your arms jolting out to catch yourself before your ribs crashed into the edge. You tried to stand but felt his hand twist in your hair, shoving your face down onto the tabletop while his other hand pushed at your lower back, keeping your body at a 90 angle, ass against him with your heart slamming and legs shaking. You cursed yourself as a fearful whimper broke the silence. You felt him move slightly, his hands releasing you for a moment before two pair of hands grabbed each of your arms, pulling them out to stretch out the sides of the table, pinning you by your wrists and shoulders to hold them out in a straight line. On your left, Kaminari was looking down at you, no emotion in his eyes until he caught you looking at him. He pushes hard down on your wrist and you bite back a cry, turning to look at your other captor, seeing Kirishima on your other side, looking patiently at Bakugou who was still stood behind you. You heard shuffling and the sound of a belt being removed. And no, please. You tried to wriggle out from your captors, desperately trying to look over your shoulder and beg, seeing Bakugou take off and fold his belt in half, eyes on your back as he did, not giving you the courtesy of eye contact. He took 3 steps closer, fingers playing with the belt in his hands, an unreadable expression on his face, but his eyes were burning. You knew that look. You knew begging was useless, but you couldn't help the blubbering whimpers that rose out of your throat, squirming and thrashing, hoping hopelessly that you might slip out of the other men's grip and run. You wanted to run, please. Just let you run. One of his hands let go of the belt to play with the zipper on the back of the low dress that started at your lower spine between your hips. No, please no. You whimpered, eyes screwing shut as a hiccup slipped from your lips against the cold table. The sound of the zipper was so loud in the tense silence, far louder than your fast, panicked breaths and restrained whimpers, cold air lapping at your exposed skin. The dress fell open around your hips, no doubt showing off the pretty black panties you'd been given as well as the apex of your thighs. Please, don't do this, please, you begged, your whole body trembling, the hands holding you down not budging. Bakugou's hands left the zipper, never once touching your newly exposed skin. When he stepped back, you couldn't help the deep, desperate sigh of relief that shuddered your body. But it vanished with one word. Zero, FRK. You looked up, seeing the raven-haired man leaning against the door on the far side of the wall. Avoiding looking at you, you saw his throat bob as he swallowed thickly before looking up to his boss, no emotion on his face. Bakugou grinned. You said she's your responsibility, you deal with her, so here. He lifted the belt, dangling it from 2 outstretched fingers. You can deal out her punishment. The silence in the air was thick, your stuttering whimpers caught in your throat as Bakugou held out the belt to Zero, his red eyes flashing with challenge. He wouldn't, would he? You met eyes with Zero for a second, seeing a stoic coldness in them you'd never imagined you could see from him, and you quickly looked away, closing your eyes. He had to. He had no choice. And you'd much rather the pain be on you than see another bruise on him for your actions. It was your disobedience, your punishment. You tried to relax, willing your trembling limbs to still, just long enough to receive the first strike maybe, but it was an impossible task with fear and adrenaline pulsing through your entire being, each nerve alive and waiting in horrid anticipation. You heard leather squeak against itself as the belt exchanged hands, footfalls coming closer on the plush carpet, each step increasing your heart rate. He has to, you kept chanting in your head. It's him or you, and he'd taken the brunt for you once before. You could do this. Do you remember the number I told you? Bakugo's voice shattered the silence with his bored, irritated tone, and you sniffled, nodding. And he snipped, now in some corner of the room, letting you know for sure that the person now behind you holding tight enough onto the belt that it squeaked wasn't him, it could only be Zero. T3, you managed to gasp out, desperate not to sob. You wouldn't make this any harder than it needs to be, not for Zero. The word had barely escaped your mouth when a short sound cut through the air with a whoosh before blinding pain swept across your lower back. You couldn't help it, you screamed. You quickly bit your tongue as your body writhed, trying wildly to wriggle away from the sting and free your arms, but it was hopeless. Kaminari and Kirishima held tight, showing no sign of fatigue or mercy as you thrashed blindly on instinct. Eyes screwed tightly shut to hold back tears, breath juddering and body trembling. The sting had barely begun to fade when the boss spoke again. Count W. What? You chose to ignore him, too scared that opening your mouth would unleash another pain noise or sob. You had to hold it back for Zero. Unless you want it to be 4, you better open your fucking mouth and count. Maybe a sob was worth one less strike. You tried to take a moment to steady yourself, feeling your hot breath fan back against your face from the table and blow back your hair that had clung to your skin. With evident venom that you couldn't hide in your voice, you took a deep breath and said, 1. The next strike came soon after and your whole body tensed, desperately scrambling to move away and free yourself. It took you a while before you could find your voice without screaming, huffing through gritted teeth. 2. You heard the belt bite through the air as it hit your flesh, stinging from your shoulder blade all the way down to your ass cheek, heat radiating from the long pink welt it left in its wake, 3 of them now decorating your back in straight lines. 3. You exhaled, tears flowing shamelessly down your cheeks and onto the table as your body slumped in defeat and relief. 3. It was over. The hands holding you down let you go, leaving you to cling weakly to the table as you sobbed, your back on fire and your will broken once again. Leave you distantly heard Bakugo mutter, sounding bored of your pitiful crying, and you made a move to push yourself up and take yourself away when he snapped again. Not you, Kiri, Zero, Kaminari out. No, please, don't send Zero away, you begged internally, barely able to lift your head to seek him out, hoping to convince him to stay, but all you saw was the door close behind the 3 men that now left you in the room alone with the man you feared most out of them all. Your shuddering breaths were the only sound breaking through the tense quiet, and you couldn't bring yourself to turn to the monster that just orchestrated your torture. Whatever he was going to do to you now, you just hoped it would end quickly. Almost a minute of no noise from him made you start to question whether or not he was even in the room still, but you dared not to look over your shoulder if he was still there. You didn't want to see him. Another minute, and your sobs had gotten under control, the occasional hiccup or stuck breath shaking your sore body. 1 more long minute later, you exhaled slowly and planted your hands on the table beneath you, pushing yourself up to stand slowly, feeling uncomfortable trickles run down your back and knowing that Zero had actually drawn BLD from his whipping. You couldn't blame him. You wouldn't the second you could speak to him. You'd fall to your knees and forgive him. He had no choice. He took no glee in your punishment. Even if you couldn't see his expression as he dealt it, you knew he wasn't like them. He wasn't a monster. Come here. You felt your breath catch in your throat, trapping your gasp as you tensed, but did not turn. More wet sensations ran down your back, dripping down into your thighs, as if reminding you of what happens when you don't do as you're told. You learned this particular lesson. You didn't need to learn it again. With veiled reluctance, you turned your body to the sound of his voice, eyes locked down at the plush carpet and arms crossing over your chest to keep your dress from falling down. You walked until you saw his shoes, stopping in front of him as he began to roll up his sleeves. Sit. You looked up enough to see where he was gesturing, seeing that he was pointing to the spot on the floor between his parted knees. With your back to me now, you obeyed silently, eyes blurring from your intense focus on the carpet. I don't want you to use your quirk unless I instruct you to use it. Am I understood? I don't want you to use your quirk unless I instruct you to use it. Am I understood? 2 voices seemed to blend in your head with those words, sending fear through your every vein, pulsing adrenaline through you. Daba and Bakugo, 2 men who mean you harm, 2 men who made you suffer, and 2 men who have now said the exact same words to you. You weren't a person, you were a tool, a pet, something to be commanded and used at another's will. You couldn't help the small choked sob that slid from your lips as it hit you over and over. Worthless, pet, prisoner, tool. It was who you were, what you were. You felt yourself coil, curling your limbs around yourself as you sat between the knees of a monster, feeling your mind go blank with nothing but thoughts of fear and darkness. With a pitiful tear slipping down your cheek, you realized you'd rather be dead. Rather be rotting in the ground than to be sat in this palace of a hideout and be tortured and tormented for the rest of your life with no hope of escape. In a perfect world, you'd still be with. No, stop. You couldn't think about him. He left you, too, right before Dabai got his hands on you. He wouldn't ever come to save you now. Oh, I am talking to you. You felt a sting across your back as words met your ears and hissed, arching away from the pain instinctively and curling tighter around yourself. You heard the boss groan under his breath in irritation, a hand settling over your shoulder to guide you back to him, and the sting returned. What was he doing? Stay still, he said. And the smell of rubbing alcohol met your nose. You could feel a soft rag brush over your back just before feeling the sting this time, and realized he wasn't causing a new injury to you, he was cleaning your current ones. A new warmer damp rag ran up your back, avoiding the throbbing welted lines, and you felt the dried stickiness on your skin disappear. His hands were gentle as they moved, a cloth either between his palm and your skin, or his bare hand only touching your shoulder to guide you to move so he could reach different spots with ease. The whole time his breathing was slow and steady, your own a mismatched mess as you tried to calm your adrenaline, unable to shake the warning feeling that something awful would happen any second. But nothing. You don't know how much time passed in silence on the floor, your mind swapping between the present moment and your intrusive vivid thoughts of pain. But you did start to count the seconds when his hands left you, seemingly done with his work but not moving or saying anything. 38 seconds, 39, 40, 41. Was he admiring his work, judging Zero for not hitting harder, thinking about adding another bleeding welt across your skin? 51, 52, 53. Why haven't you healed that burn? What? You felt your brow wrinkle in a soft, confused frown, inclining your head ever so slightly towards him but not quite turning to look at him. You don't think you could meet those red eyes if your life depended on it right now? He stayed quiet, waiting almost patiently for his question to be answered. It took a few moments to find your voice and another few moments to be sure it would come out of your mouth without a sob, but your tears had long dried across your cheeks and the words broke the silence in a small and meek response, all cried out and numb. I can't. Bullshit, he almost immediately scoffed, shifting behind you, and you saw one boot come into view as he straightened out one leg beside you. Vulture, you found yourself replying before thinking, looking down at your fingernails and wincing at the red sore hangnails you'd been picking at this whole time without even realizing it. When he didn't speak, you knew he wasn't going to hit you for your outburst and sighed, figuring he wanted an explanation. I can't heal anything that's healed. Once the body has done its job, then I can't do anything to alter the cells. What's done is done. I can't fix a botched scar or a missing organ or a missing limb because there's nothing to fix. Your eye. My eye was fresh, torn, split in two by a blade. You found your fury rise in your throat. You knew your quirk. How dare he assume? Part of you wanted to get out the last of your bitterness about the whole Kaminari eye situation too, still furious at the utter cruelty of that experiment, although you didn't doubt similar or worse would happen again. But through your bitterness, you found the courage to glare up at his face, looking him dead in the eye and seeing no emotion in those red pools of venom as you continued. Something still fresh and bldy and attached to the nerves still has a chance to be fixed by my quirk, but my burns are healed. I've lost my chance to mend that. You felt your courage seep away as you looked away from him and back down to the ground, all defiance and energy draining like a pulled bathtub plug. I've lost my chance to mend everything, you muttered under your breath, closing your eyes to escape from him in the only way you could, just for a second, existing only with your thoughts that only got darker and darker. Will you kill me? You asked hopefully, partially disgusted by yourself for hoping for death. No, he stated plainly. Will you continue to hurt me? Yes. Will you ever let me go? No. Silence. Okay. It was the answer you'd expected. To think anything different would have been stupid. So why were you starting to cry again? No tears ran down your cheeks, but you felt your eyes sting and your body shake in small suppressed sobs once again, laying your arms across your drawn-up knees to hide your face in them. I wish you'd just kill me then. A bitter bark of a laugh hit your ears, making you flinch before he shifted behind you and you heard him walk around to crouch in front of you. And why would I do what you wish? You shrugged, not knowing how else to physically respond as you silently wept for your fractured life. Human decency. He laughed again at your words, but softer this time, before you felt his hands pull you up to your feet, lingering on your arms to make sure you would, or rather, could stand on your own, before he nodded his head towards the door. Come on. Wordlessly you followed him through the halls and up the stairs, too tired to fight him anymore. But instead of the familiar left side corridor that lead to the bathroom, Ciro's room and Kaminari's room, he went right. You felt your legs lock up for a moment, standing still at the threshold of the right side hall, unease flooding your body. You didn't want to go there. You didn't know what going that way meant. Left meant warm water and one nice human. Right was uncertain. No, come on. No, I swear if you don't hurry the fuck up, I'll let Kaminari fucking take your eye. Can't heal it if it's gone, right? He sneered in a mocking tone and you gulped, quickly forcing yourself to catch up, almost tripping over in your ridiculous high heels and having to catch yourself a few times. He rolled his eyes and pushed open a large door, walking in and holding it open for you to go past him. It was a bedroom like most of the rooms seemed to be on this floor, but it was far more grand. A giant four-poster California king stood dead center against the wall with two large windows either side, seeming to show a beautiful and equally giant garden view. Except for the usual bedroom furniture, the room was devoid of any decoration. The sheets were a deep green with black pillows, giving the bed an endless abyssal feeling to it. You watched as he let the door close behind you both, starting to yank off his tie as he went to sit himself down on the edge of the bed, not looking at you as he rid himself of the tie and loosened a few buttons before he leaning back to plant his hands behind him, reclined in a seated position. In the low light of the room he looked beautiful, godlike. Without his glare on you, he seemed unreal, like something from a model magazine. Photoshopped and fake and unreal, but there he was. Still a monster, but what a beautiful monster he was. You had to blink a few times, breaking your stare to repress the urge to vomit. No way were you just admiring the reason your back is fucked up, well, double fucked up. You glared into a corner of the room, focusing on the stinging of your back to ground yourself from your obviously rising insanity that seemed to be a result of your imprisonment. What kind of sick psychopath did you have to be to think what you just thought? Bile rose up your throat and you grinned. That was far more the appropriate response to looking at him. What are you smiling about? Your grin vanished and you looked down at your toes peeking through the tips of the heels, swallowing thickly. Nothing. Fr King spit it out, he sighed roughly, rubbing the heels of his hands against his eyes, seeming frustrated and tired with the whole situation, but not dangerous, not yet. Better to say something now. Just wondering what it would take for you to actually kill me, you lied. Starting to actually wonder where the line was drawn. What would it take? His hand slid away from his face as he examined you, fingertips crossing under his chin as he leans forward to rest his elbows on his knees thoughtfully. Oh shit, there was a line. You felt your heart skip a beat. How far would you have to piss them off to receive your escape? Why are you so eager to die, little mouse? Oh, that caught you off guard, leaving you blankly staring at him as you tried to word your answer. It made sense in your head you'd be living a life of fear and pain. What was the point? But saying it out loud sounded so childish. How could he understand? Why would anyone want to live like this? You settled on and he nodded, raising a hand to gesture for you to approach. Reluctantly, you did, standing in front of him as his eyes grazed over your disheveled state, still clutching to the front of your dress to keep it somehow on your body. You shivered under his eyes and a small smirk began to form across his face. But look at where you're standing. In clothes that cost more than the average asshole's car. You've not been abused, only punished. You've not been starved, not been left locked away in a cell. The smirk widened. Is it all that bad? Your back throbbed and you looked away from that disgusting smirk. I'm not free was all you could mutter in response, looking down at the dress in your hands that somehow managed to cost more than a car and feeling dirty wearing it. You wanted to take it off, throw it away and burn it, but not in here. You just wanted to be alone back in the cell and away from this man and away from his false treats. No one is free. Little mouse, if any man thinks he is, then he's a fucking idiot. Everyone owes someone. You heard him stand and looked up at him as he started to approach, making you take a step back and another, like a predator stalking his prey. I don't know you, I don't know any of you anything, you yelped softly as your back hit the door, his hands following soon after to cage you in. He looked above you, his smirk gone and replaced with a look you could only describe as indifference to your trembling form cowering beneath him. Up close he felt real again. His strange scent of caramel lingered in the air between you, a delicious, dangerous smell that made bile rise up your throat again, making you remember the first time you laid eyes on him, when you'd first been captured by his gang and he'd come up behind you to torment you and gloat. You're staring, he said gruffly, and you swallowed, blinking out of your thoughts to see his brow creased, narrowing his eyes. I'm watching, you corrected, locking onto his eyes as they flicked over your face, scanning you until you spoke where they then locked back with yours. Watching, or waiting. He leaned in a little closer and you pressed yourself harder against the door, trying to maintain some personal space, no matter how difficult he was currently making it. You said you don't owe us. Why do you think that, mouse? You scoffed, earning an amused raise of his brow before he tilted his head to invade your space a little more, now mere inches from your face. You involuntarily gulped and a hint of amusement flashed in his eye. You and that fuckhead boyfriend of yours owe us a lot. That did it. Something snapped in your brain and you growled a little as you pushed against his chest, claiming back your space as you spat in his face. Dabai is not my fucking boyfriend. Your words cut off as he shoved you hard against the door, a hand around your throat and another on your upper arm. Your dress had fallen when you'd shoved him and now the cool air of the room coaxed goosebumps across your skin as you breathed shallowly, your chest rising and falling quickly in fear. But you were still angry, still fuming and uncaring of current consequences. Your back burned against the door, only adding to your fury as you glared venomously at the monster pinning you by the neck. Maybe this was it. He'd strangle you and you'd be gone, just like you wanted, but you didn't. You wanted to fight, scream, kick, claw his eyes out, fight for your fucking life and goddamn survive to see this man and Dabai burn alive under your will. Let go of me right now or I swear to God I'll. Your words were stolen away. In your fury you hadn't realized how close he was, how close he had gotten to your face, how his parted, angrily panting lips had nearly been touching your snarled ones, how barely moving an inch had enabled him to press his lips on yours, silencing you. This wasn't happening, it couldn't be happening. No way was his disgusting mouth on yours, his tongue trying to urge your lips apart, and no fucking way was he trying to pull you closer. No, this wasn't happening. Your lips parted slightly in shock, and you heard him make a noise of amusement before his tongue invaded your mouth, his grip loosening on you. Right before you snapped your teeth closed on him, iron immediately flooded your taste buds, and he wrenched away from you, hand over his mouth and a lot of red dripping from his lips. There was way more than you thought there'd be. You caught him good, and he was furious. You spit the BLD pooled in your mouth at him, throwing the rest of your caution to the wind before twisting for the door behind you. You threw it open as he lurched for you and darted out, sprinting for your life and not caring that your dress had long been abandoned on Bakugo's bedroom floor. You just had to run. You didn't want to know what would happen if he caught you now, and although you knew there was nowhere to hide, your instincts were driving you to run until you simply couldn't anymore fight or flight, and you had no weapons in your arsenal tough enough to fight a man twice your weight and almost twice your height. You kept your balance surprisingly well above your stiletto heels, adrenaline keeping you going when you wobbled painfully over your ankle once or twice, forcing your legs to keep moving. Get the fuck back here. You heard Bakugo roar down the hall behind you, explosions sounding loudly as he crashed after you, the sound of destruction and wood splintering only urging to you run faster. At least you didn't bite off his tongue. You'd definitely be dead for that, although you don't think the punishment awaiting you would be much better. FRK, what had you done? Where could you even go? Running was only making things worse, right? You turn a sharp corner, your breathing ragged and your back burning, no doubt bleeding from all the movement, but as soon as you looked over your shoulder to see where Bakugo was, your feet tangled, sending you tumbling blindly forward and into something solid. Warm arms wrapped around your torso, stopping you from falling completely, pulling you into a strong chest. At first you lifted your gaze with hope that Zero had heard the commotion and had come to save you. But when bemused yellow eyes stared down at you, you felt your stomach drop, hope fading as quickly as it had come. Definitely not Zero. "Ooh, you alright, boss?" Kaminari asks as his attention was drawn up and behind you, an arm still looped around you to keep you upright. You weren't making it easy for him though. You were fighting against him to flee while trying to cover yourself as best as you could given the circumstances. A furious Bakugo came marching towards the two of you, and you flinched, cowering into Kaminari as you saw his teeth flash, his own BLD coating them in a way that made him look like a demon. Maybe he was, maybe they all were, and you were literally in hell from the moment you met Dabai. That's what life had been anyway. Regardless, you'd done it now. You were in real damn trouble, clinging to a monster to cower from a much worse beast. "Come here," Bakugo commanded, his voice low and rumbling, his words clear even though his tongue was dripping BLD from the corners of his mouth, looking eerily like a vampire. Your sudden shift from struggling to shoving yourself into Kaminari's chest took the electric blonde by surprise, and he looped his other arm around you to steady you in what could almost be mistaken for a protective stance. The movement was purely instinctive, and he knew he'd fucked up when Bakugo's furious glare switched to him. "What's going on?" Kaminari asked, his tone light and playful towards Bakugo, feigning normality even though he knew he should just drop you and walk away and let Bakugo's business be Bakugo's business. But he was acting as though it was all a childish game, and he was the amused parent in the middle of it all instead of a grunt protecting a prisoner his boss wanted to punish. Bakugo didn't say a word, his chest rising and falling in fast pattern. Not panting, but strained, anger now aimed solely at Kaminari. You swallowed thickly, eyes wide looking between the two blondes as the strength of your adrenaline started to make you vibrate. Your fingertips tingled. Your quirk was threatening to spill over without your control, trying to heal your body and only causing you further distress. He told you not to use your quirk. You weren't trying to dig a deeper hole by defying that rule. A faint glow started to emit automatically from your hands, and you curled them into balls, quickly snuffing it out and getting control over it. Bakugo's eyes flickered to your hands before back to Kaminari's face, an unspoken conversation happening between the two of them as you shivered, the air on your skin feeling too cold for comfort in contrast to the burning ache of your back now that you had stopped running. "How fucked were you?" Would Kaminari hand you over? The tension was thick as the silent conversation seemed to end. Bakugo's eyes narrowing down on you before he sucked his teeth, licking off the BLD before straightening up, composing himself and silently turning to walk away after giving a brief nod to Kaminari. You look up at Kaminari, lost at what had just happened, and he simply smiled down at you, any traces of worry erased instantly. "Let's go get you ready for bed." Yeah. How on earth had you managed to walk away from that? You had a horrible sinking feeling that it would not easily be brushed under the rug and forgotten. You had to face your actions sooner or later, and the wait would be torture in its own right. Was it worth postponing? But Kaminari was already guiding you away, and Bakugo was long behind you, having disappeared off to his room maybe. You'd just hold on to this moment of calm for now, although you would really rather spend it in the company of someone else if you were already in trouble with nothing to lose. "I want Zero," you said once you found your courage, having left Bakugo's wing of the mansion. Arms wrapped tight across your chest to keep you warm and covered up, feeling awkward walking around half bare. Kaminari simply shook his head at your request. Not a good idea right now, Princess, he says as he leads you further down a more familiar wing, stopping short of Ciro's half of the hall and turning into a new room, gently tugging you by your upper arm to follow him in. Despite your hesitation and longing look towards the familiar door just a few feet down the hall. Why wasn't it a good idea? Did he feel guilty for what he did to you? Then you had to go see him. Tell him you know he didn't have a choice. Tell him it was all okay. Almost as if Kaminari could hear your thoughts, he pushes you gently inside and locks the door behind him. Come on, no arguments. He sits you down on the edge of a bed, saying nothing as he turns away from you, and you try not to think about Ciro. Maybe tomorrow, you thought. Maybe tomorrow you'd find him and explain that there was nothing to feel guilty about. Is this your room? You ask, and he nods, rummaging through a drawer of a black oak dresser. Black seemed to be a theme here, black and yellow. It reminded you of a beehive or a wasp nest. You shivered again, your arms tightly crossed over your chest to cover yourself, wanting nothing more than to kick off your heels at last and wrap yourself up in something warm and comfortable. Here he lifted his hand, a soft-looking t-shirt in his grip. It was faded, looking like an old band t-shirt, but had obviously been well looked after and loved. You took the material into your hand and winced. I'll get BLD on it. Don't worry about that, it's had far worse than that on it over the years. He smirks, and you try not to think about that as you shove it over your head, turning your back to him as you pull it down your body, a gentle hiss spilling from between your teeth as it grazed your back. The scarred skin as a base layer to your new wounds only made them feel far more tender than they should have been. You'd wished with every last fiber of your being that you could make it go away, make it disappear with every last memory of Dabai. But it was impossible. You'd tried before, and it was hopeless. You'd forever be reminded of the man who broke you. You felt a little better after covering yourself up, letting your arms hang loosely by your sides now that you weren't using them as a shield. A hollow feeling had filled the space your adrenaline once had, and you felt yourself slump a little, Dabai circling in your mind like a vulture waiting to feed. Maybe you could just disappear. Leave people like Dabai and Bakugou far behind you. You'd just have to figure out how. Hey, orders are orders, Yano, Kaminari says quietly, and you turn back around to look at him, his eyes distant before he seems to shake a thought out of his head, giving a warm smile. You tilt your head and he shrugs before continuing. Holding you down, I mean. Though, you nod your head, looking down at the end of the shirt that just about covered your thighs, dangling by your knees. Was that a sorry? Orders, you repeat softly, and he nods. Was it just that he couldn't disobey Bakugou? The same way Ciro couldn't and got beaten when he tried. You'd told yourself that it wasn't Ciro's fault. He had no choice. You hadn't even thought for a second that Kaminari and Kirishima were in that exact same boat. Orders are orders. Your feet suddenly throbbed in your shoes and you knelt down to unbuckle them, sighing in relief as you slid your poor toes out of their prison. Was harsh punishment normal for everyone, not just you? Does he do that to you when you don't follow orders? Kaminari stiffened for a second at your question, blinking at you before a smile covers his brief expression of shock. We don't push it to find out, I mean. He used to back before we weren't quite like family to each other. A long time ago he'd beat the shit out of Kirishima over breathing too loudly. And Kirishima isn't a pushover guy, knows how to take a goddamn hit. His quirk makes him a fucking rock, but Bakugou just snapped and didn't stop till we had to drag him off. He chuckles at the memory while your eyes widen. Over breathing too loudly. He laughs at your boggle-eyed expression, starting to unbutton his shirt, making you blink in a flustered manner, quickly averting your eyes as he stripped. Don't forget what he did to Ciro for bringing you out of the cell to heal his life-threatening injuries. Your throat goes dry, feeling hollow in your chest again. How could I ever forget? You don't ever think you'd forgive yourself for that, the horrible black eye and the way he'd held his ribs in hidden pain, all because of you, because he stuck his neck out for you. Kaminari had pretty much just done the same thing though, stepping in to save you and get you away from Bakugou. Was he in trouble now too? Didn't you just disobey him? Back there when he was glaring at you. Without missing a beat, he pokes between your eyes and you look at him, a confused frown creasing the spot his finger was touching. Hey, stop those wheels in that pretty little head of yours. Don't blame yourself for Ciro. He did what he wanted to do. No one forced him. But still he did it for you, as did Kaminari. Was he so bad after all? Kaminari crossed his arms, looking down at you with a curious expression, a question seeming to wiggle on the top of his tongue, but he stayed quiet. How on earth had you survived so long under Dabai? Did you have friends to protect you? Or did Dabai just treat you better than they did? He couldn't have, otherwise the burn on your back wouldn't exist. So much didn't make sense, but he'd save it for another time. He could see how badly you needed rest. You caught him staring at you and stared back until he smirked. See something you like? You quickly looked away again with a frown. Definitely not. He laughs before yawning and stepping away. You're in with me tonight, Princess, he says as he pulls down the covers of his large plush bed. And you frown, pouting at the nickname he'd stuck you with since you'd been captured by them. I'm not a princess. He laughs, looking at you with an expression that read nothing other than seriously. Are you in trouble now too? You ask, and his breath catches. He passes it off awkwardly as a cough, climbing into bed and staying strictly on one side, choosing not to answer. You took his silence as a yes and climbed into bed too, staying on the furthest side you could, without falling off. He rolls his eyes and pats the middle of the bed. Come on, I won't bite. You didn't believe that for a second, staying stubbornly right on the very edge until he rolled his eyes. Stop being a brat, come on. He pats the space between you both again, a little more impatient this time, and you weigh up your options: do it and be comfortable while risking being touched, or defy him and get zapped. He had just saved you from bakugou. You slowly moved closer, still keeping your distance, surprised that he did the same, simply turning to lay on his side and examine your face. He seemed far away in thought, his eyes drifting across your features before settling on your lips. Are you gonna kiss me? You ask, snapping him out of whatever thought he was having, and he smirks. Do you want me to? No, you answer immediately, leaving no room for confusion. You did not want to kiss him. You didn't want to kiss anyone. Kisses were preludes to horrible and painful things in your previous experience. He chuckles, laying flat on his back, hands behind his head as he smiles up at the ceiling, and you feel a breath of relief loosen the tension in your chest. Then I know better. You've drawn BLD every time someone's tried so far. I'm smarter than I look. Yeah, no. True. You nod, trying not to laugh at that fact, feeling yourself sink into the mattress as you try to relax, laying on your back too and looking at the ceiling. He wasn't going to touch you or bother you, so maybe you could fall asleep. A beautiful gold chandelier hung from the very center, and you felt your eyes grow heavier and heavier the longer you traced its intricate details with your eyes. You were exhausted. Everything had been exhausting, and your back was numb and hot and throbbing all at the same time. Your limbs were heavy and clumsy as you tried to keep yourself from spreading out and enjoying the warm comfort of the bedsheet. Kaminari seemed to be already falling fast asleep, his breathing deep and even, and lulling you towards her own sleep with its steady rhythm. He'd put his neck out for you. Why would he hurt you right now? You don't know why he did what he did, nor why he was letting you sleep in his bed without bothering you or pressuring you to be thankful. But you were grateful. You had to take everything 1 hour at a time in this place, and this hour would at least be calm and comfortable. All thanks to the blonde who was falling asleep beside you. With your last drop of consciousness, you let a few words slip from your mouth. Thank you.